morning. Talk back to me. Good morning. Y'all know I come from church. You got to talk back. Good morning. My name is Reverend Mia McLean, and I am here to guide us this morning in a little bit of centering exercise as we gather for a full day of panels and speakers centering on the thought, crafting our futures. We begin this morning with some deep breathing. I know a lot of us don't breathe very well. I've been told that we don't inhale and exhale properly. And so this morning, I invite you to breathe with me. Breath is so sacred and important. If there's anything that the COVID-19 pandemic taught us, is that breathing is a sacred obligation. So I invite you to engage this in whatever way your body or your mind wants to engage. Feel free to stand up. Feel free to do the movements that I am gesturing toward you, or you can stay seated, close your eyes, do whatever you want to do. So I invite you in this moment to breathe as you inhale. And let it out. I invite you to lift your arms. Inhale. And let it out. And this time I invite you to repeat after me. I am still breathing. Exhale. Life in this world. Inhale. I am still breathing. Exhale, life in this world. Inhale, I am still giving. Exhale, love to this world. Inhale, I am still giving. Exhale, love to this world. Lastly, I am still holding. Inhale. Exhale, hope for this world. I am still holding. Inhale. Exhale, hope for this world. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. Life in this world. Sing it with me. Say, I am still breathing. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. Life in this world. Everybody say, I am still breathing. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. Life in this world. Say, I am still breathing. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. Life in this world. I am still giving. I am still giving. I am still giving. I am still giving. Love to this world. Everybody say, I am still giving. I am still giving. I am still giving. Love to this world. I am still holding. I am still holding. I am still holding. I am still holding. Hope for this world. I am still holding. I am still holding. I am still holding. I am still holding. Hope for this world. In my tradition, there is a story we call the creation story. It is found in a book we call Genesis. And in this story, there is a creator. And the creator is dreaming of a future, crafting a future. But many of us who follow this tradition were told that the creator was creating out of nothingness. But we have come to understand that the creator in the story was actually creating out of chaos. Out of the womb be chaos, this creator said 3 words, let there be. Out of the chaos, and if there's ever been a time in our world where there has been chaos, The time is now. The Creator says, let there be, as the Creator creates out of chaos. In the midst of death-dealing Supreme Court decisions, let there be. In the presence of inequities, let there be. In the face of fascism, let there be. In the midst of all of the intersecting systemic injustices that are affecting our health and well-being, let there be. We are crafting the futures that we deserve out of the chaos and saying, let there be. Because what? Because we intend to survive. We say, let there be, because we intend to survive. And so this morning, this day, as you are gathering, we are still breathing life in this world. And we are still giving love to this world. And we are still holding hope for this world because we intend to survive out of the chaos. Let there be. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. Life in this world. Life in this world. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. I am still breathing. Life in this world. I am still giving. I am still giving. I am still giving. I am still giving love. Love to this world. Everybody say, I am good. I am still giving. I am still giving love. Love to this world. I am still holding. I am still holding. I am still holding. I am still holding hope for this world. One more time, say, I am still holding. I am still holding. I am still holding hope for this world. You all have a blessed day. Amen and ashe. Good morning, everyone. Please, let's give it up for Pastor Mia for that amazing centering moment and for reminding us of who we are and why we're here. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the 2026 Health Equity Summit. That's applause there, too. And it's our second annual summit. So many of you know that the Health Equity Fund is the result of a partnership between DC government and Care First. The Greater Washington Community Foundation in 2021 was selected to administer a $95 million fund that is the result of this partnership. It was designed to address the structural and social determinants of health. This fund is administered by the board of, this fund is governed, by the Board of Trustees of the Greater Washington Community Foundation and a 7-person committee appointed by Care First and DC government. It is led by the visionary, Dr. Marla Dean. It is held together by my colleagues, Isabel Spate and Nathan McCullen. Where's Nathan? I haven't seen him. I saw Isabel. It's in the back somewhere. Yeah. It sits in the community investment team at the foundation that is led by Darius Graham. There's Darius in the back. And it is supported by the entire team at the Greater Washington Community Foundation. From finance and operations to marketing and communications, this is a whole of organization
effort. Let's give it up to the team, my amazing team at the Greater Washington Community Foundation. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this has been the subject, the Health Equity Fund has been the subject of evaluation from day one. Our colleagues from AIR are here with us. Perfect. Awesome. So just a few facts on what we've been able to accomplish to date, and it has been a lot. To date, the Health Equity Fund has committed and dispersed more than $90 million through 155 grants to nonprofit organizations in DC. 65% of that funding has been awarded to organizations led by Black and brown people. 53 designated towards 7 and 8. 53% of the funding designated towards 7 and 8. We've supported over 3,000 youth, 68,000 adults, 345 large businesses, 125 entrepreneurs, and 63 unique policy and advocacy campaigns. The average grant size from this fund, $525,000. What's so unique about being able or given the mandate to disperse $95 million over 5 years is that we really get the opportunity to fund the sector like we want it to win. It's a unique opportunity. Most of you all know that you all are applying for $50,000 grants and $25,000 grants. We were able to do with the Health Equity Fund what many foundations, many of our partners wish they were able to do. Multi-year funding, general operating support, funding collaboratives, funding innovation. When we first received the funding, we knew for sure it was our mandate to make sure that we invested in the existing infrastructure. There were nonprofits on the ground who were already doing the work, and we wanted to reward you for the work that you've been doing with bubblegum and duct tape. You know, some of you just trying to keep it all together. And then we knew for sure that the policy advocacy and systems change would need time to take hold. And so we invested in policy advocacy and systems change as the level 2 of our funding, knowing that you would need the time to build the coalitions, to develop the partnerships, to establish the relationships, to push the policy agenda, so that 5 years later we would begin to see some of the results and some of the fruit of your labor. We invested in innovation because we know that you can't continue to do the same things and get a different result. And so many of you came to the Community Foundation with your big ideas, with your innovative solutions, with your partnerships. And this is the other thing that I think once we are able to tell the tale, Brandy, about how working in coalition and working in partnership is really the name of the game. You know, in philanthropy, we often talk about how so many nonprofits are coming into us asking us for resources to do the exact same thing. And you all get frustrated with us when we're sending you a $25,000 grant or a declination because there just isn't enough, there aren't enough resources to go around. But when you come with your partner organization and you say, this is the lane that I'm going to play in, and this is the lane that you're going to play in, and we're going to do this thing together, it makes all the difference in the world. I'm really proud of what we've been able to do, what we'll continue to do, because while the fund will wind down over the next 12 months, the work continues. Here's another fun fact. At the end of this fund, we will have dispersed $95 million. And you might ask, well, how can you do that? Well, we were thoughtful at the start. Just like we started the evaluation on day one, we also invested the principal of this fund in the market so that all the fees that the Community Foundation would capture for managing would be paid by gains from the market. So we get to disperse $95 million and cover the cost of our team managing and administering this work at the same time. That's something that we should be excited about. That's something that we should be excited about. So I'll close by just saying how excited I am to be with you all today, that the weather has cooperated, that we get to be in a space that is so amazing and so beautiful, and to dream about how we're going to craft the future together. Without further ado, let's get the day started. I'm going to turn it over to, come on down off the stage. I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you all very much.
Hey, y'all. Hi. Hi. My name is Rio Holiday. Thrilled to be here. I am joining you as a graphic facilitator. And I'm curious, just by some noise, a show of hands, how many folks are familiar with graphic facilitation? Okay, some woos, some maybe half the room. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm sitting right over there. This is my monitor. I'm going to be doing 3 things during the whole day. I'm going to be listening to what is being said, synthesizing for key themes and quotes, and then the part that you will see and hear after each panel is that I'm going to be documenting, using both words and images, what is happening in the conversation. And we're doing this for a couple of reasons. So first of all, it's going to be a lot of talking. So we wanted to bring in some visuals, some other ways of making meaning, of inviting ways of knowing into the space. We wanted more engagement and making this accessible to folks. So the last couple of things that I'll say are that my background is in public health. I have an MPH. I've worked in public health policy and organizing, and yes, and I often felt like we didn't do a good job listening, and we didn't do a good job inviting people in and making the journey feel joyful and feel creative and feel beautiful. So that's a lot of the energy that I'm trying to bring into the space today. And then the last very logistical thing is that this is all happening live. You'll see it at various points. It's gonna be messy, it's gonna be, half draft, but it's your conversation, and if I mischaracterize anything, if I miss something, I'm gonna ask for your feedback. I wanna know. I wanna know what's resonating. I wanna know what I missed. So there will be some points during the day that I come up and talk to y'all again. So with that, we're gonna keep going. Yeah, yes we are, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, so excited to have you here. So excited you made it to Southeast DC. It is not easy getting to this part of the world from the other parts of the region. And I just say this because I'm a Ward 7 resident. Just remember that when you're planning stuff, how far we are coming to you. So glad to have you in our home today. With that, I am Marla Dean, and I'm going to have our distinguished all-woman panel who's talking about AI. So who believes that Black women, women in general, don't know things about science, technology, engineering, and math? They do. So we're gonna go back, take a picture, send it to a Black or brown girl right now, and say that you can be anything that you wanna be, because we see it right in front of us. Women involved in this conversation, so thank you. So we're gonna briefly, each of you, introduce yourselves, and then tell us a little about the work you do and how you came to be interested in the issue of AI, okay?
Is it? Yes. Okay. So, hey y'all. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for holding this event in Southeast. I got to just come down the street today, which was really nice. Not something that I get to do often. My name is Jessica Fulton. I am an actually economic policy strategist who works on issues related to how we improve economic outcomes for Black households. I came to AI because when I was at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, which is America's Black think tank, we were thinking a lot about how to get ahead of issues affecting Black communities and how to kind of think about how we leapfrog the things that are happening right now and think about things that are coming soon. And I think Nicole had a big part in why we were involved in those issues. But that's kind of how I came to AI, because I care about what's happening with Black folks. And I wanted to make sure that we were aware and prepared for what's coming next.
Exactly, thank you.
Hello, DC. I know you all had your coffee. I saw you over there by that coffee bar. I'm Dr. Nicole Turner-Lee. I'm a senior fellow in governance studies and the director of the Center for Technology Innovation at the Brookings Institution. And prior to that, I was at the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. I'm also the founder of the AI Equity Lab, which has been a project to workshop AI as it relates to health, education, criminal justice, financial services, and housing in a way that it is actually created and designed to be non-discriminatory and anti-racist. So I'm particularly interested in this intersectionality of AI as it actually lends itself into various sectors. I'm also the author of a book. I almost forgot. I got to be self-promoting, y'all. It's available wherever books are sold. It's called Digitally Invisible: How the Internet is Creating the New Underclass. And how I actually got to AI was in 2018. I was at a workshop at the Federal Trade Commission, and there was a sister who was actually she was the CTO at the time, and she showed a website, which was the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Centennial Anniversary. It's almost about 10 years ago. And she told everybody to look at this website for 30 seconds. And we looked at this website that was celebrating, I'm not gonna say only the greatest fraternity because my father is Omega, but it was really interesting. Within 30 seconds, we saw advertisements that said, get your arrest record for free, and some of the highest credit card offerings in terms of interest, all flashing on a website celebrating the centennial of a Black fraternity. At that time, we used to call that big data, and how big data was being manipulated and targeted for ad surveillance. You fast forward to today, we now have artificial intelligence, and we're seeing this type of algorithmic discrimination, as well as what we'll talk about today, some of the secondary effects of artificial intelligence affecting communities that are most vulnerable. So my work intersects race, technology, and social justice, so I'm particularly interested in how we get more people at the table to talk about issues like this. So very excited to be here among this esteemed panel.
Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here with you all. Flew in from San Francisco, California, where I reside in Oakland, so I live on the East Bay. I live with my people. My name is Ifoma Udo, Dr. Ifoma Udo. I'm the Executive Vice President for Policy, Advocacy, and Science at the Black Women's Health Imperative. For those of you that may know the history of BWHI, it was founded in 1983 by Billy Avery on the beautiful campus of Spelman College. And 43 years later, we are still doing the work that aligns ourselves to thinking about the healthcare needs and practices and holistic service needs and policy-driven needs around this nation's 22 million Black women and girls. So we are deeply focused, and that is our mission. We are driven by how do we support this nation's 23 million Black women and girls. In my role at BWHI, I always have to say to people, I came to BWHI as the lead of our policy initiatives, but I come to BWHI as a scientist first. I'm a medical anthropologist by training. I have a PhD in medical anthropology. And for me, moving from a science background, from a science researcher who implemented HIV research portfolios for over 25 years in my career, and moving into policy was deeply meaningful, particularly now as we all know that healthcare
and public health is actually political, right? It is the political question of our times. I work at BWHI to intersect science to policy. So how do we actually really have policies in this country that are driven by what we know about what data says, what facts are, and what we know drives health equity? We come to the place of addressing AI because it is one of our key policy pillars. We actually named it as one of our 5 key policy pillars in 2024 when we realized very specifically how the AI landscape was going to be impacting how Black women and Black families are able to access not only just their basic health information. When we think about what the pandemic showed us about how communities don't have access to basic internet services. 1 in 4 households in the US South beyond the Mason-Dixon border don't have access to the internet. But here we are talking about big language models and AI access to our health information and how that's going to be impactful about how we interpret what is going on with health equity. So that's how we come to the AI landscape. It's a pleasure to be here with you and our colleagues and to be able to have this conversation. So don't worry about the signs blowing and everything else. They're going to be okay because guess what? It was raining all week. It was cold. And so we got sun. So the sun came out today. So we're good. And we have people who will catch signs, put them back up, and all the things. So thank you. I just want to take us back a couple of years when we had our first Health Equity Summit. And we started the conversation talking about the concept of health equity. Then we went to a panel around economic justice. And then we ended on a panel around liberation and reparations. So we looked back at what has created the health inequities and disparities in our city and in our country. Today, we want to look forward. We want to look forward. We want to talk about what's on tap, what's going to happen, what we need to be aware of, and where we're going. And so with that, let's start with you, Dr. Turner-Lee. Do you consider yourself an AI protagonist, optimist, neither, both? What do you think about AI? Just give us your perspective.
So when I first started in this space with AI, I dated myself. I used to tell my colleagues that I would be like Gilligan on Gilligan's Island. Now, I know some of y'all just look like Gilligan, who? Now, the older people know who I'm talking about, right? Gilligan was on this deserted island and basically isolated himself along with his colleagues and friends. And I did that because I was actually very mindful as a sociologist of the impacts of AI. And in my mind, I wanted to actually find ways to interrogate those systems so that they would actually make sense and not persist systemic inequalities. Well, Gilligan didn't work for a period of time because my husband happened to ask me a question, and when I could not find the book in Barnes & Nobles or the library, I had to go to AI. And so I found an answer to his question, and it didn't necessarily make me a supporter, but it actually helped me to contextualize how AI works and where it actually applies itself in ways that make sense. So an answer to your question is that I'm both, right? If you would have asked me this question 6 years ago, I probably would have said antagonist, but I would say both because AI right now in its current form is actually transforming so many sectors and verticals, and particularly in the health sector, which I find to be quite interesting. We're actually seeing transformative discovery when it comes to pharmaceuticals. I have a mother-in-law who is actually going through cancer right now. Her doctor has actually showed some compassion because he's using AI transcription services, and he's able to look her in the eye and speak to her, or he's been able to look at her multiple medicine requirements and sort of use AI to ensure that there's no interaction. That has got me optimistic about the placement of AI, particularly in the health sector. Now, I'm also someone who's an antagonist, and I promise today I will not be Debbie Downer. First and foremost, let me ask you all a question about a person by the name of Henrietta Lacks. Okay? And I'm real sensitive. I have her picture in my office, right? Because Henrietta Lacks was a woman whose DNA and cells were stolen and harnessed to actually solve cancer in a way that she did not benefit from any of those treatments. In fact, she died quite poor and discriminated against. It's a beautiful movie about her life. And just 2 weeks ago, her family settled like one of several cases around Henrietta Lacks. When I think about AI, I think about Henrietta Lacks because this is a very extractive technology. It is really rooted in the fundamental tenets of grabbing your information and data and fueling it into machines to make either predictions or generative decisions like the large language models that we just spoke about. And when you have an extractive technology, you do not directly benefit from that. And for people who are medically marginalized or disproportionately on the other side of economic opportunity, you become a target of exploitation and manipulation. And one thing that I'll just share, and I'm a call and response person. I swear I'm not a preacher. I'm not going to have you pass around a collection plate. How many of you in here have a copyright, trademark, or anything else on an AI product or service? Just raise your hand if you, okay, one. Anybody else? I do this at every talk, Marla, so please. One. So my mother used to say, if you're not in the kitchen, you're on the menu. Sit with that for a moment when you think about the other side of AI, where we are all subjects and our data is being used to actually train these models. And in some instances, we do not have direct benefits. We are in the health space, if we don't get this right with the correct guardrails, Henrietta Lacks. And we fought too hard not to go down that road, and I know we'll talk about it. So that's where I stand. I've sort of conflicted in this space because I'm a technologist all the way. The newest thing that comes out, the newest innovation, I'm there. I've been doing technology policy for 30 years. But at the same token, I do not want us to see us on the wrong side of history because of a technology we do not own, create, develop, and control. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Jessica, are you an AI protagonist, antagonist, optimist? Tell us what you are.
Right.
Or both.
Right, on one hand, but on the other, yes, both, right? So I am probably going to sound throughout this conversation like I'm not excited about AI, and I just want to acknowledge that right now. But I do think that artificial intelligence is a tool, right? So if we think about a tool as being neutral, it has a lot of promise, it has profound promise. And I think there are also a lot of very real and oftentimes hidden risks that we need to be looking out for. And I think a lot of these conversations focus around how we as individuals, as communities, need to take the opportunity to learn these tools, and we need to be using them. And I will say there is a big difference between me using AI to format a Word document because I'm like bad at making it pretty, and these larger systems that are already quite discriminatory and exclusionary using these tools to like further discriminate and further exclude. And I'm not saying that that's something that people are intentionally doing, but it's a real danger, and I think we'll probably get into how that works. But I think in particular from the economic side about things like people using AI in human resources to screen resumes or to review applications. I think about people using AI in financial services to decide what loan rates you're offered or if you're qualified for a loan. There's an opportunity there to take the discrimination out of the process by using these tools, but there's also an opportunity or a danger, I guess, in how people use the data that feeds into these tools that's already biased to spit out decisions that actually further discriminate, right? Like cause even more inequality. And I think that the questions that I ask are like the control piece. Who's creating these tools and how are they being implemented? I think about what people who are using these tools know, right? If somebody comes to you and sells you something and says, this is gonna make your job a whole lot easier, but they don't tell you the dangers that are inherent in using that tool. And also, I'm submitting my resume and I didn't know that my information was going into this tool and that you were using it to scrape my data and build more systems. And also, I'm getting denied a job because my resume doesn't match somebody else's, right? Those are things that are real concerns, and I think it's dangerous to go all one way or all the other unless we think about how we're regulating these products.
Thank you. And Dr. Udo, tell us, what are you?
I side with my colleagues here. I'm both and, sometimes if. Maybe today, but not tomorrow.
You made me think of a song, A, E, I, and sometimes Y. Okay.
All the letters. I again, from a personal story, I'm a Gen Xer raising a Gen Alpha. I have a 9-year-old daughter at home. I know. I saw the size. Yes. I pushed one out at 42. So I was one of them geriatric mamas that got one out. And so, yes, and I'm tired. And I think about all the time how she's great. She's the best and hardest thing I've ever done, y'all. The best and hardest thing I've ever done.
Dr. Udo, I'm here to tell you, as a former principal and educator, the best is in front of you. This is the good years, okay?
Yes. I'm watching this generation be shaped by their experiences in engaging in technology and AI as a driver of their educational context, and that's very worrisome to me. I remember the Dewey Decimal System, right? She just goes to, Google and looks it up, right? I remember like the smell of the books in the library. They have her doing PowerPoint presentations and she's in the 3rd grade, which is amazing and also a bit scary in terms of what is this next generation's capacity around critical thinking and critical analysis, and how are we going to ensure that they still have the ability to do that, particularly in a world that looks the way that it does, where access to education clearly is being stripped before our eyes. So I worry about that from a personal perspective. From a landscaping perspective, and from what we know with BWHI and what we know about public health, AI technology is here. We cannot avoid it. It's already here. It's already said and done. We have to stay actively engaged in these processes of knowing where our information and our data is being used, what these big language models are collecting about us, how they are being manipulated, how our culture may not be included in these big language models, and so how that is not necessarily going to be the best interpreter of our healthcare. And those are really critical issues that I think we should be all thinking about with regards to things like algorithmic bias, how we actually can access our health information, what the health information systems look like. Do our doctors have permission to put our notes into AI systems? It's nowadays you go into doctors' offices and they turn around and say to you, I'm going to take these notes in HI because it's going to give me a better opportunity to engage with you. But is it really? And where are those notes going? And those are questions that we should feel free to ask. We need to be involved from a community perspective around understanding these issues, and so I stand with my colleagues here. It's both an and. I'm worried about it for a number of reasons.
So Dr. Turner Lee, you were about to jump off your seat, I could see. So you're getting ready to answer this question for us, the bias loop. Okay, so AR systems are trained on historical data that reflects centuries of racial discrimination. How do we break that cycle where bias inputs produce bias outputs? And what can we do to try and address this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this bias question is real, right? Because as we talked about with transcription, there are several examples where the transcription may be wrong, right? It could be language that is misunderstood. It could be the interpretation of the AI of the conversation that's going on. And there was a case actually at a very well-resourced medical institution where the patient died because of the transcription being inadequate. So I do think, just a quick plug, Dr. Chris Purnell, who will be on your second panel at the NAACP, she and I are actually working on a paper on the questions that people need to ask their doctors about the use of AI in this 21st century healthcare system. So it's really interesting, right, bias, because as you've mentioned, Marla, first and foremost, all data that goes into AI systems, because it's publicly available system, are basically traumatized. And just to give a quick lesson for people who follow AI, not all AI is generative. So if you don't mind, I'll just give a quick lesson, because it does impact the extent to which the bias shows up in the data. Predictive AI is normally algorithmically driven. That means, if you like red shirts, right, and you constantly buy red shirts, when you actually try to purchase something else, a red shirt is going to pop up. That is a positioning algorithm. If you are a person who streams movies and you like a certain genre and the movie asks you, do you want to watch this next? That is a recommendation algorithm. If you are on Tinder and you are looking, I'm sorry. I was about to tell you, yes, those algorithms are giving you the same looking man or same looking person every time you swipe it because it knows your preference, right? That's the way AI works. It learns you, it personalizes you, but it also grabs publicly available information that is not necessarily weighted or given human subject treatment, like people who would pursue an academic career or a career in medicine where they're looking at those discrepancies. And so the AI on the predictive side can predict things that actually pattern systems of discrimination and other behaviors. We see this with facial recognition technology in law enforcement and how it picks up people because the technology itself does not do an accurate job identifying skin tones. The other side of it is generative AI. Many of you actually probably use this already in terms of all of the things that Jessica talked about, but that data is based on two things. It's old, it's basically 6 years old when it actually gets to you, and two, it's publicly curated again on information that may be traumatized. And so what that means, I'll give a perfect example. When I wrote my book, I went to generative AI for a summary. One AI was really good. It was like, this book is incredible and fantastic, and this is the plot, right? The other one was like, this black author says this. And I was sitting there trying to think, well, how did it figure out I was black? And how did it figure out that this said this? Then I was also mad that they didn't buy the book and they just stole it and then summarized it, right? But for me, it became an instance where there will be moments that the AI is not going to be able to discern the cultural efficacy of our communities. And that becomes problematic when people see these tools as very much part of their, way of, I'm doing a project right now with Spelman College, and we have found that the girls use AI and they name them men. And we were trying to figure out why they make it so anthropomorphic. Well, it's actually a good deal in terms of power equality because all AI is trained by white males. So if you can say, I want to get this job as a 23-year-old white male who has this kind of credential, most likely you will be blind in the resume search. So part of the bias shows up because we're not at the table actually creating those products, Marla. And then also, we don't have people who can avert what that bias might look like at the onset of it. So it starts in the beginning, in the design of the problem, and then it ends with how we actually interpret those problems based on the context in which the AI lives. So I don't have an easy answer because as part of our Equity Lab, we have found that the best way to alleviate bias is if you're gonna create AI for healthcare, you need health practitioners. You need community health clinic leaders. You need doctors at the table. You need primary care physicians. You need specialty care. So we've been creating these spaces where people who work on the analog side that may not have enough knowledge on the digital side sit with the technologists to come out with what I call more purposeful, pragmatic, and a little less discriminatory AI because they're able to identify the data set that is correct as well as the problem.
Thank you. And Jessica, this is where I want to bring you into the conversation. So who owns the algorithm? Specifically when we talk about healthcare and financial decisions and communities of color, what does a model of community ownership and governance of AI look like in practice? How could we participate in that process?
Yeah, I'd be really interested in if Nicole has seen successful models, because this is something that I've been thinking about and searching for. What I know that is happening right now is a market that is rewarding extremely bad behaviors in many instances and making a lot of billionaires. Like, I think something like, there were like 45 billionaires created because of AI last year alone. And like, I'm not saying that I don't dislike billionaires. I just don't believe that they need to exist, right? That is like, what is it like? It's like $1,000 million or something ridiculous, right? Okay. And so what's happening is that there's this class of people that are creating this extreme amount of wealth based on the data that they're collecting from all of us and using to solve problems that may or may not be actually advancing the quality of our lives, right? It's also it's propping up the stock market right now, while we see like the stock market booming, while we see Black unemployment at the same time increasing steadily. So it's distorting the economy in all kinds of ways that I think are actually really harmful to us, and we're not getting any of the real tangible benefits in most cases. And so for me, what that looks like is like, how can we get more folks engaged in creating AI that maybe won't make them billionaires, but will actually create tools that support our lives and improve the quality of our lives. But I have not seen the data trusts.
Yeah, I'll jump into that. I mean, I think that we're seeing more examples of like community ownership of data in among Indian country. So we're doing a project where I had the opportunity to go out to talk to tribal communities, and they're building, the other controversial piece are data centers, but they're building data centers because the guy said, we are losing so many people in our particular community that we want to use large language models to recover their voice, so that young people know the voices of ancestors. I found that to be such an incredibly dope way to look at AI, and one that actually they've said, in our data center, we're only putting servers of people from our community that can actually help us. And because if you know tribal lands in Indian country, they've also been highly extractive, right, in terms of their data for health. So for me, that's a different way to look at community ownership. The other area where we're seeing a lot of community ownership is in the global majority countries. Places like Africa, as well as Latin America and the Caribbean, are starting to deal with this issue called data sovereignty, where they want to make sure that their data is secure, safe, it's not sold or transferred without their permission. That's a little different than some of the conversations many of us in this room in the United States have heard, which is around selling your data. I would not advise anybody to sell their data. Your face, you might think it's worth about 10,000, it's really like 25 cents, right? When you start adding it up with all of the data that is publicly available and free, your data is not necessarily commoditized to be a high value entry, unfortunately. But again, groups around the country and the world are beginning to toy with this term, which I think is also going to be very important in healthcare as well, as we look at data sovereignty.
So what I heard you say is that in other places, not necessarily the US, we could learn from how they're approaching this work. And I think sometimes as Americans, especially US citizens, we're often don't believe we need to do that. So those are some places to look to. Dr. Uda, I want to talk to you about the zip code problem. So, AI in healthcare is increasingly used to predict risk and allocate resources. If those systems factor in zip codes and socioeconomic proxies, how will they impact our healthcare, the resources we receive, and the outcomes that we have?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because obviously zip codes in this country dictate a lot around economic values in certain communities. We just saw, even as maybe sort of a broad reaching stroke to make a connection, but the SCOTUS decision of yesterday, which clearly is about the breakdown of the Voting Rights Act, but it's based on zip code. It's based on a swath of area of the South and Louisiana that we're trying to, not us in this room, I hope, but that the systems are trying to break down. So the zip code issue is really huge. I want to toss out a stat that, as I was preparing for today, that my analyst threw together for me in terms of the zip code issue around data quality as being a really big point. Proxies are an area where we see data points being used to predict future behavior or outcomes in ways that can introduce bias to our healthcare systems. For example, a widely used hospital algorithm that helped determine which patients should receive additional care management used in past healthcare spending because it used an indicator of how Black people spent their money on healthcare, which, of course, because of the economic sort of guidance of who we are in the United States, if you're using predictive models that are based on how we spend on our healthcare as compared to other communities, it's definitely going to include a bias, right? And so Black patients historically spent less money in the healthcare system because they had less money. And so this particular algorithmic bias or algorithm used a systematically underestimated their needs. When the researchers went back and recalibrated the system to account for this bias, the percentage of eligible Black patients that were to receive certain patient navigation services rose from 17.7% to 46.5%. So that's a real example of how these systems create bias based on who we are, where we live, what our income status looks like, and then how that directly connects to our access to available care.
Thank you. So, Jessica, let's talk about wealth. Let's talk about wealth gaps and the age of automation. AI potentially will displace a number of jobs, workers. So who's most vulnerable? How do we protect ourselves? How do we protect Black and brown communities as we move into this level of displacement that is before us?
So the AI and automation sort of future of work conversation is one that has been happening for quite some time. I think back in 2018, the Joint Center actually did a study that found that like a third of Black people were concentrated in the top 30 jobs that were at risk to automation, right? So like this is something that we could see back then and that we can kind of measure now, right? But I think we need to think about it as not something that's inevitable. This is something that we have decisions that we get to make in. So I sat on this task force with the Partnership on AI, which was trying to think about how we make sure that we all get to benefit from AI and automation and how it affects workers. And we took a long run approach to thinking about what would happen. We know that jobs are going to be created, and we know that jobs are going to be lost. We don't actually know how many, and so like one of the things that happens is people tell you exactly how many jobs people are going to lose and exactly how many jobs that people are going to create, and there's like some discrepancies there, and we don't know, but jobs are going to be created, jobs are going to be lost. We know that the tasks that people do at work are going to change, right? You're going to have to adopt this technology in some ways. That's going to change how you work and what you do day to day. We know that wages are going to change because some skill sets are going to become more important and some skill sets are going to be less important. So you're going to be paid more for knowing the things that are more important, right? And then we know that job quality is going to change. And by that, I mean specifically, some people are going to get to make decisions. They're going to have some choice about how AI is integrated into their jobs, and other people aren't, right? Like you think about somebody that's gonna experience more surveillance at work because of how AI is integrated. But then on the other side, you might think about a radiologist who gets to use technology to make them better at their jobs, right? And that's gonna make a difference. I think that in the short and medium term, we get to make a lot of decisions about how all of this affects all of us. I think one, decision makers, so like people in government, the private sector, educational institutions, need to be thinking about job creation, and they need to be thinking about how they're gonna get people to transition into better jobs. It's something that we've done like historically poorly as a country, so I want to be very optimistic, but I'm not. But like if you think about when people lost their jobs because factories went to Mexico or to China, we didn't actually do a great job helping those workers get into new jobs or do high-paying jobs and supporting those communities, but that's something we can do differently this time. I think we need to think about our safety net, so stuff like unemployment insurance, food stamps, Medicaid, the things that we know that people need when they lose their job that actually have been further harmed because of because of the current administration and the decisions that they've made about our budgets and the cuts that they made last year. I think we need to think about just how we're intentional about how these tools are implemented. So it is not the case that because an AI tool is created, that it has to replace a job. There's this example about it's like a casino in Vegas where they wanted to create a robot to bring gamblers their drinks. Like they were like, we're, because I guess I'm not a gambler, but like when you gamble, you get free drinks, I guess, at the casino. And so they were gonna have a robot do this instead of the cocktail waitresses. And the cocktail waitresses are like, well, how do we make sure that people don't get served too much alcohol? Because as a human being, I can see when somebody's slurring, right? I can see when somebody is not ready to have another glass. Maybe I bring them back a water. Maybe I take a little bit of time to come back to bring them their drink or what have you. That eliminates a liability for the casino. A robot can't do that. And so I think being thoughtful about how these tools are implemented, I think that's about unions, like worker power, getting that in their contracts. I think that's about us being intentional about what we accept as customers and where we want AI tools implemented. And I think that's just about how we think about how we want society to look as a whole. And that potentially can prevent some of the job loss or the transition costs that people are gonna face.
So we're almost at time, so I want you to start, all three of you, imagining a world of abundance, the AI designed, implemented, impacted world we would like to think about as I ask Dr. Udo and Dr. Turner-Lee these final questions. But everyone, I want you to give us this world that we could have if we're thoughtful about AI. But before we get there, Dr. Udo, I want to talk about surveillance versus service. AI is often deployed in low-income communities of color, not as service, but as surveillance. Talk about how we can control that and address that and how we should be responding to that.
Thank you for that question, because I, again, coming from Oakland, California, as I'm sure many of you all here live in, and if you're living in DC, may come from communities and live in communities where they are predominantly Black and brown. It is a huge systematic issue. Our city has been in deep conversations about the use of surveillance systems throughout the city and county of Oakland and Alameda County in terms of watching our lights. As you're driving down streets, you hear a lot about this. The city has contracts with the Ring door cam. So those of you that may have Ring door cams on your homes may want to reconsider the use of those. We know that when surveillance is overused on communities of color, on Black folks, then that is where you end up seeing systematic rates of incarceration increase. The pipeline between failure to thrive in schools and being kicked out of schools increases. High school graduation rates decrease for Black and brown students. Those surveillance activities get used in a variety of ways to deny Black people access. And so I think for us, this is a policy issue. At BWHI, our job, our role is about what do we need to do to ensure the practice of data and facts directly linked to policy. And we think about that for healthcare, but we're thinking about that obviously for these broader issues. It's policy and how we are deeply engaged in our local governments, in our federal governments, and our state governments about these conversations. So we urge you to go to those meetings. We urge you to go to your city council meetings. There are ways to become involved in policy, not just here at the DC level, but also in your states, in your local communities, in your school boards, on your police commissions. These are policy issues when we talk about the connectivity around surveillance and how AI models are being used. And we need more people to show up in those meetings, in those city council meetings, and raise those causes for concern.
Just FYI, there's a big issue this evening, a town hall on that. So it is National Youth Violence Prevention Week. And we're having a huge conversation here in the district around curfews and how it will increase contact, especially with federal law enforcement and the impact it will have. So I appreciate you drawing those connections so that people can see lifelong outcomes to surveillance that people have when they're overly surveilled. Okay, and finally, I want to talk about regulation. Okay. Dr. Nicole, what can we do about it? I mean, I don't have an eloquent question, but can we do anything about it, or are we just, what can we do about accountability and regulation on these issues?
So I would say this. I mean, I think we're actually in this inflection point right now when it comes to accountability. If you look around and you see the number of people who are actually resisting data centers right now and showing up at town hall meetings and showing up in urban areas and sort of asking new questions, it's because people are trying to take back their agency. If you think about social media and young people, right, and all the parents who are now talking about social media and having these reactions, largely due to the mental health concerns and the surveillance concerns, people are giving tech companies, these warnings that they require more accountability in the products that they're actually developing, designing, and disseminating. When we think about even in health, where we're actually seeing conversations in medical schools as to the extent to which AI should be used as a compassionate partner in care and the outcomes that it actually produces. People are starting to talk about this stuff, right? I mean, I know some of you are talking about this stuff in your living rooms and your dining rooms and trying to figure out how Copilot got on your computer and you didn't download it. Listen. We are at this stage where we are starting to question what is this technology and what it's doing. So on the accountability side, I would tell all of you that you play a role in this. We cannot sit here and allow regulators who are taking their time with just about every issue, and then at the same token, pushing back on states that actually require, even places like DC that are starting to think about the use of facial recognition technology, the use of pre-screening and hiring and AI tools. Places like New York are actually putting in some guardrails, but the federal government is telling states, do not do that because we will take other monies away. So I would say to all of you, regulation is obviously the answer. We do need safeguards that protect civil rights, human rights, and allow people the same settled laws that they have in healthcare, financial services, in terms of fair credit. Those laws should not go away, and they should be reinforced as these tech companies develop these tools that are just out in the wild, wild west. But in the absence of that, I think it's really important for people to take back their agency. If I can, I want to respond to something Jessica said. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they made this mention. If everybody goes out there and you all use generative AI to create press releases and reports and all this other stuff, then you will be a homogenous actor in a system that will soon require knowledgeable people. So we all can't use it because they're going to be looking for somebody that actually is a real person in the next 5 to 10 years. And so we're like, I was talking to this person, you're so right. We have to figure out how to get a hold of this so we're not actually making ourselves look like everybody else. That's the first thing. And then I think it's really important on the surveillance side that we begin to, and this community is a start, to look at how AI impacts health.
Yep.
Health is a huge factor in which AI is actually going to interface. I'm working now on a project around Black women in AI because the AI tools that could help us mean, there's a regulation right now, and this is what I would tell you. There's actually regulation that's not AI oriented that we need to pay attention to. Yeah. There's a regulation out there on improving clinical trial representation to ensure that you have diverse groups that provide input into clinical trials. That would be helpful to our communities so that we have drugs and products that are actually catered to our DNA. Things like that are going to have AI become adjacent to it. So I would say, Marla, it's not just the AI for the responsibility and the ethical nature and the inclusiveness. It's about thinking about AI like this. Yeah. It is a tool that's going to find itself in so many areas, but it's also going to overlay in a broken society right now.
I just want to piggyback on that.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I
It's
just
a
want to
broken
piggyback on that. The piece about regulation is incredibly important. And directly linked to regulation is a ask for transparency and accountability in these systems. There is a federal office that was tasked about 10 years ago with developing standards of testing of AI models and AI systems that no one's paying attention to this federal
about the
office.
FDA?
Yeah, yes. Nobody's paying attention to the rules and the testing models that actually exist at the federal government side. And so then within that context of transparency and accountability to these tests, you try to go to the website and try to go see when was the last time that OpenAI was tested against the standard. You can't find the data. And then you have people come to us at BWHI saying, we want to test this model for breast cancer and bring it to the FDA for the third round of clinical trials. And we look at what they did and we're like, where's your p-values? How many black women were included in the study? What was the testing model that was included? So there are direct correlations between this idea of transparency, accountability, and regulations that either do or don't exist and that we continue to push on. So I think
well,
that's
and if
incredible.
I could just go back to that, right? That's why all of you play a role in this. This is not just, for relegated to the technologists who understand this stuff. It's really relegated to all of us to actually ask the right questions. Like I said, the project that I'm doing with the NAACP, it's like, what do people need to ask your doctor? How do you need to engage these tools so that it works for you? Because I really believe that once more people do that, we will influence the ability of the regulatory environment to be more attentive to us. And we will find ways to actually make AI work in spaces that make sense for the context in which it's deployed and interrogate it better.
So we're going to start to have the audience ask questions. We have time for a few questions. If you have a question, please come up to the mic as we go to but before I say that, sweetheart, it's okay to ask questions. See, when I'm asking you all those questions, it's a good thing. Okay.
Oh, you had to ask that person? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to get up in your marriage.
Yeah. He's like, so many questions. Why you got so many questions? Okay, it's a good thing. Anyway, I just wanted you to hear what the good doctor said. With that being said, Reverend Mia said, let there be. So let's build on that. What could it be if we were able to say, let there be, when it comes to AI? Paint us, 90 seconds each, the world that you imagine. Wait a minute, y'all said that y'all were both. So this is your moment to be AI positive.
So I'll start. So I've been toying with this let there be values-based data, right? And so I think of values-based data as data that is thought about by people who are indigenous to the community, that cross the intersectionalities of where people sit, right, in this ecosystem, and allow us to find ways to solve real problems and to sort of switch those in from deficits to assets. So what do I mean by that? There's a lot of interesting work that I always experience from entrepreneurs. So my let there be is let there be entrepreneurs and innovators that actually take that on and try to reframe and re-narrate how AI finds itself in the public good. I think that there are just a really incredible people that I know that are trying to tap into this ecosystem. Some people on the health side where they're trying to do small language models so they can actually deal with smaller populations like in Black women and their health outcomes. They're creating these tools that do not look like the big models of the 5 companies that are actually orchestrating this. So I would just say let there be imagination and courage for people to come in and take that role, because I think that will be the future of AI designed for all of us.
We actually are funding a demonstration project with the young people who are going to be entrepreneurs who are working in AI. And so we're really excited. It's in Ward 7. And so let them hear that message and let that be. So really excited about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Who else is ready for Let There Be?
I'm going to pop in and
Try to stay positive. That's what she's trying to do.
I'm trying to stay positive. Yeah, I still have that 9-year-old at home, y'all. So thinking about her and the issue of young people and how they are brought into the conversation to allow for that level and depth of creativity so that their critical skills and thinking and ability to think about how they envision a future of AI is, I think, incredibly important. So thank you for mentioning that study, and thank you for talking about that, because I think, you know, it's not me. I'm Gen X, but as I said, I got a Gen Alpha at home. It's her. And so what are we going to do to ensure her safety and their transition into that being a way of thinking for them? So I'm going to go to the data integrity pieces now. I'm going to stay positive. One of the funniest things that I think that I do currently use AI for is, because I have a terrible sense of direction, so the Google Maps and Waze and all those things are my best friends. But I recently reset my Waze to use Shaka Khan's voice, so she's my like guide through getting through life in the world. When I get in my car, it's Shaka Khan. She's like, have a great trip. Shaka Khan here. You're gonna turn right and everything's gonna be all right. And I'm so pleased every time I get in the car and Shaka Khan is telling me where to go. So I say all that to say that the use of these systems can be useful. Data integrity in these models is incredibly important. The voice sounds like Shaka Khan, right? So let's continue on this path of thinking about data accountability and data integrity in these systems so that they can be useful in things like healthcare, in things like how we speak to our doctors, how we understand who we are, and how we access our care. So.
I had a long time to think, and I have barely anything. But I do think that there's a lot of opportunity, because I think that these tools are incredibly powerful. What I would love to see is for us to find ways to support innovators who are creating solutions to our big problems that maybe aren't going to make a lot of money, but like we could use AI as a tool to help solve our climate change problem, or come up with solutions to help us mitigate the impact on our lives. You think about the glasses, the Meta glasses. Those actually an incredibly good tool for people who aren't able to see, right? Like, because they get to learn a little bit more about what is around them, right? There are tools that people use to support farmers, right, in predicting droughts and how they need to deal with irrigation, right, which strengthens our food systems. Like, there are all these things in the world that we don't necessarily get the opportunity to support or see that could solve some really big problems for us. And maybe they make billionaires and maybe they don't, but like, I think there is a world where that's where we focus our energy.
Thank you. So any questions from the audience? Oh, you got your time later on today, but
No. This is related. I need some help here. So first of all, this is an amazing panel. Black women doing it again. Thank you. Thank you, Tonya. Thank you, Marla. So, Marla, I love the question you asked about, are you a protagonist or antagonist? And this is a question about energy. So I was just noticing the energy and spirit. So I think everyone basically said both and. And that is probably a signal of how Black folks, people of color, have chosen and maybe even been coerced to negotiate in this reality. What I sensed in the both and, though, is that the protagonist side is optimistic, but the antagonist side is like, there's a lot of weight there. And I'm just curious about, like, how are you trending more toward antagonist in this moment? And if so, what does that mean? Like, what does that reality mean, and what should we do with that?
I'm not trending more antagonist. I think something that Dr. Nicole Lee said is that we're at a critical crossroads right now. It's a very interesting time that we're in this sort of precipice around how AI models, large language models, are going to be used. BWHI's, our position is we're already here. And so we have to get in the game. And so what is the game that we want to get into, and how do we lean in a certain direction around data integrity regulations? We're releasing a white paper this summer to talk specifically around data integrity and testing of these AI models, and then what are the policies that need to be in place to ensure that those standards are kept up to care. And so I think, to your point, yes, that Black folks have to navigate those systems all the time, and I do not lean heavily towards the antagonist, but I lean towards we have to get in now. Like there's no waiting anymore. We're gonna be behind if we don't do it now.
Okay, wait, I can't, because we are so far, and my time person was like, so we're going 30 seconds on the question, 30 seconds on the answer, and we'll just have to come together and assemble at another time and even go deeper, okay? Come on up, Edmund, please.
I will do my level best to keep it to 30 seconds. Think tank creature, so it will be rough. We talked a lot about ownership and integrity. We haven't talked a whole lot about the ways that this collective information is being gatekept and stewarded in very, very, very isolated spaces. So when it comes to looking at what regulation might look like, or what innovation in entrepreneurship might look like, what are the considerations or things you've observed so far about open access models, weighting transparencies, the ability to have those data centers owned by some entity that is not the one that owns the algorithm for the model itself, having those things where local control, like with the tribes, they have their centers. Well, what about power and other resource generation for that? Splitting those things up or having some public component, third-party accountability into those.
So I'll just say this. It's just a follow-up to the first question. You all have to know this stuff, right? So there are a lot of free courses online that you could take. If you have no idea about AI, take those courses. But I would just say to you, my friend, the problem is I think we were leaning in that direction in the last administration in terms of open source. But now, as Jessica has said, that this is a market driver, right? AI is I think about a $1.2 trillion contributor to the GDP or something I heard, which is why these data centers and compute power has become a big deal. And that's why no one wants to get in the way at this administration of any of the compute assets. So to your point, I'd be happy to talk to you about it afterwards. I think the challenge is the market is driving the regulation, and the political pressure to actually move forward with higher compute is to compete with China. And when you have that dichotomy, we are all collateral in the middle of it. And so that makes it difficult for us to go to those open access models. It's happening, but not at scale that you're actually suggesting.
Thank you.
Yes. As a student of economics, I learned in my economics 101 class that new technology means a better economic condition. what we're looking at in the long term is technology that is going to be very useless. It is not going to benefit all of us, okay? So why is it that we are spending so much time thinking about how to conform this thing and to bring it into context to benefit the population? Because it's going to destroy it. I mean, why don't we go to the real AI? Real AI is African intelligence, and that is exactly where we should be going. And you stop using all of these resources, because I look at this stage and I see so much resources. Why are we trying to conform it? Why are we trying to reform it to benefit the billionaires? That's my question.
Big question. Yes, absolutely. I think part of the challenge is, as Nicole mentioned, that the market is driving the conversation, the things that people are thinking about. I went to a conference out in the Bay Area, and the way that they are talking about what they want the future to look like, they're building these tools to create a future where, one of the things they said was like, where we don't have to go to work. We go to work on our glasses and we never have to see people. Well, like, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not what I want my life to look like, right? And so I think there is a real concern, but a lot of it is, and what we saw in this last election and in this administration is how powerful the billionaires that control these industries actually are when it comes to our political process and how much they're able to influence our democracy today and likely more in the future. So you're right.
Seriously, that's it. Drop mic. It's done. Okay.
Next.
I think my question is pretty similar. I feel like my analysis and understanding of AI is that this is a massive corporate power grab, and it is actively a tool of corporations to destroy workers' movements and to destroy any semblance of democracy we might have, because as you're saying, it's like giving you a vision of the world that you have no input in, and that like is being decided by AI, and that's being presented as an expert. So I feel like it was a very diplomatic panel. You guys didn't talk about the corporations as much until the Q&A, so I would love to hear a little bit more of like that bigger picture political analysis, because I really see this as the latest tool of the capitalist class to destroy workers' movements and to destroy like what we can build for our communities.
So this rise of AI, though, I want people to be really clear. It just didn't happen like a year ago. Right? I mean, this has been, I'm an internet policy person, so the book that I wrote, I mean, we really didn't talk about this here as well, is like people can't get on AI if they don't have broadband, so let's just start there. There are a lot of people here in Washington, D.C., particularly in this community, that don't even have access to the internet. So the AI that we're talking about today will not be useful to those schools and hospitals and homes because they don't have connectivity. But what you're talking about is this has actually been in the works for more than a decade. AI is not new, and this dismantling of governance and democracy has also been adjacent to these political pressures, as well as the innovation that we've experienced. What makes AI very different, how I feel as a person who's been in technology for 30 years, is that one, people do not have agency. The lack of regulatory or legislative directive to reel in things like data privacy, disclosure, any other type of regulation that protects consumers is absent. And then 4 is that we, even in our tension to actually push back against the technology, we still use it. And so part of it is like this consumer enticement to use it, coupled with the lack of power equity that's happening as companies take over and sort of blend this narrative. We all as a community do need to do narrative shifting. And like I said, pay attention to what's happening with data centers in communities, and you're beginning to see that resistance that you're talking about, because it's almost like people just woke up, because now the data center's in their backyard. Before, it was a convenience on your laptop, and now it's like right behind you. So I appreciate what you're talking about. It is an area, as a person who works in research at a think tank like Jessica, we pay attention to, but there's no easy answer, which is why these conversations become quite difficult to sort of discern the realities of why we're here.
Thank you. And our final question?
Wow, I'm last. I hope I didn't ask you this a couple of weeks ago, but as a creative, how do we protect our intellectual property with AI? Recently, a publisher pulled a book because an author ran this woman's book through an AI detector, and there were similarities, so the publisher just canceled her. Like, I don't know.
Use a pen and paper and a lot of whiteout. I'm serious. Somebody asked me
Go
that.
back to the Dewey system. Go back to the Dewey system. Yeah, we have to.
I mean, look, AI is going to be helpful to the creative field. I just was on a panel at a conference where a woman talked about using an AI tool where she talks her own voice into it and it translates her own voice. Again, you know, AI is like going to the old country buffet. There's just so much food, right? And how many of you all go to buffets? Raise your hand, just admit it if you go to a buffet. I grew up in New York, so we had Beefsteak Charlie and Sizzler, and you used to go there on Sundays after church, and you'd eat as much as possible. By the time you got to the filet mignon and the good cut of fish, you were already full. That's what's happening to us, folks. We are ingesting so much AI that we don't even know what the AI does and what is actually good for us. And so I'm encouraging communities like publishers, like creators, like health experts, find the AI that the community can validate and endorse and talk about those products. Because again, this train has left the station and we're gonna continue to see the extraction of AI technology and our intellectual property, our creative heft. And you know, right now, until we do something about it, regulatory-wise or as a community, it's still gonna happen. So find your people and come up with what's validating for you. I got you.
Thank
Fine,
you.
you know me.
We're done. I'm so sorry. We appreciate the conversation. We're over time, and we are just beginning this conversation, so we will continue to do so. Rio is going to come up and capture some key moments and get feedback on if you want to adjust some of the kind of synthesis of this conversation. So this is your time to offer feedback to her analysis and her graphic description of this conversation. Thank you.
They'll say you can't cheat death. Yet here I am. Like the phoenix that rose from its ashes, here I stand. No life without death, no death without life. I am one of those chosen by God to do it all again, to leave it all behind and somehow build a life with nothing but my bare hands. I am one of those so-called immigrants, the ones whose lives are defined by a groove that only we get to dance to, swaying from side to side, heaven and hell both so close, yet here we stand. Rooted at the center of it all, we are a field of roses growing from cracks in the concrete. And as long as the wind graces our skin and the sun lights up our path, you will see us move. How else can one honor the gift of living if not by accepting the truth of dying?
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's so beautiful to see all of you today. I'm Iris Jacob. I work with Anti-Racist DC. I use she, her pronouns. I'm very happy to be here with y'all today. And I just want to give a shout out to all the people who put this together. We have been meeting since May to do this. So a lot of energy has been going into this day, and I'm just so excited that it's happening. So thank you all so much for being here. We are going to be having a conversation about health equity today. We're going to be talking about race and power and equity and justice. And just before we start that, I just want to make sure that we're all aware of the subject matter that we're getting into so that you know the depth that we'll be talking about. And I want us to be aware of what that means for your own self-care. So if that means that you need to take a step out, hi Nini. If you need to take a little break, take a breath, whatever you need to do, please take care of yourselves for this time. Also, we're going to be talking very openly and honestly about racism and power. If that is a conversation that makes you uncomfortable, I would ask you to actually do the opposite for that. I'd like you to stay in and be present. I am going to also make this a little bit more interactive. So I'm going to ask you all some questions throughout this. I would like for you to, if you can, put your hand up to those questions if they apply to you. It'll be clear as I ask them. And then I'll also be giving you some time to talk to your neighbors around the conversations that we're having here, just as a heads up for what's to come. For the panelists, is it okay if we do some quick intros? Is that okay? So if you could tell us your name and your institution and your work, and then what got you into doing health equity or health justice work?
Certainly, his son. Hello, everybody. What a privilege to be here, not only among you, but also this amazing group of people. I am Dana Bowen Matthew. I'm trained as a lawyer, and I am the dean of the law school at George Washington University. What got me into health equity, however, was growing up in the South Bronx, where my mother and father both worked between them, like the immigrant brother. I bet we have this in common, 5 and at one point 6 jobs, and therefore both died before they were the age I am today, which you better believe was too young. They did that because the schools in the South Bronx, the water in the South Bronx, the air in the South Bronx, the food in the South Bronx, and everything was inferior from a public health standpoint to where they bused me 7 miles away, and I got to get all the degrees and all the stuff that made me the dean of the law school. So that's how I got into health equity.
Good morning, good people. I am Chris Purnell. Many folks know me as Dr. Chris. I'm a public health and preventive medicine physician by training. I am a health justice warrior by heart. I work at the NAACP. I lead our center for health equity, and I always imagined that I would be a well-behaved physician. That's who I always thought I would grow up to be. And actually, I thought I would be a brain surgeon. But through my journey of becoming the woman that I am today, whether that is through disability, I have a chronic health condition, I have postural orthostatic tachycardia, and it put me on my back for many years of my life. I was uninsured before we had something called the ACA. I lived trying to negotiate care without the ability to afford it. I've been unemployed, I've been underemployed, I've run for an election and lost, I've run a candidate for an election and lost. So it was through these types of experiences that I learned that I had to leverage my heart, my soul, my passion to change the systems that structured the lives that we lived. And that mandated that I do health equity work. I was already interested in public health or population medicine or community health, but that mandated that I do health equity and racial justice work. And especially being the baby of my family in East Orange, New Jersey, of parents who actually were a part of that migratory pattern up out of the South, who grew up during a time where They didn't even have the opportunities that I had access to. My father said camp was in none of our vocabularies, and so I went out to get every degree that he could not get, though he was the smartest man I have ever known. And my mother had a PhD in love, and so I combined all of that to do the work that I'm doing right now.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's so good to be here. Okay, first of all, where are my DC General babies? Who was born in DC General? All right. I asked that question because this is where I was born, and I'm so proud to be here and be a part of this conversation. I am Christopher King. I am Dean of the School of Health at Georgetown University. We are a new school that has been formed to address exactly what we're talking about today. I entered academia later in my career. I started out in healthcare as a healthcare practitioner and executive leadership, and I just remember seeing a lot of gaps. Like, folks wanted to talk about health disparities, and we were doing all of the empirical measurements and looking at different populations, but folks did not want, and they were not prepared and did not have the skill sets to address the root causes of these differences in racial outcomes. And so when the Affordable Care Act legislation was being deliberated and eventually authorized in 2010, I was working on my PhD in health systems administration. I understood the goals of the Affordable Care Act around population health. I understood that if we are going to improve the health of populations, we have to think about the conditions in which people live, learn, work, eat, and play. And we have to have healthcare systems that have the competencies and the skill sets and the desire and interest to do meaningful work outside of the medical establishment. And so that requires us to address health equity, racial equity, social justice, and that is what my body of work is all about. It's around reforming our healthcare delivery system so that all people have access to high quality care and they're able to live meaningful lives in the communities in which they live. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing. I'm so excited about this conversation. Okay, so as we start this conversation, like I said, I'm with Anti-Racist DC, and I like to do some interactive training stuff. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if these questions apply to you. If you would rather stand up, that's fine. If you would rather do a movement, if you can't move your hands or stand, that's also fine. You can do something else, as long as you are in some way participating. I would also like you to check out what's happening in the room. How are folks answering? How are folks participating, et cetera? Sound good? Yes, okay. Enthusiastic consent almost. Okay. All right, please put your hand up if you like chocolate. All right, good. Everyone's on my team. Okay, now we'll start. All right. Thank you so much. All right, please put your hand up if you or someone you love live in communities where people have negative health outcomes due to environmental racism. Put your hand up if you or someone you love live in communities where people have negative health outcomes due to environmental racism. Thank you. Second one, I'm going to only read these once because I think that's okay. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love have experienced mental, emotional, spiritual, or physical health challenges brought on by their or your experiences with the police, the prison system, ICE kidnappings, over-policing of young people, or any other kind of racialized policing. Thank you. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love have experienced stress in work environments because of microaggressions, white privilege, and racism. Thank you. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love live in neighborhoods with little to no grocery stores, making it difficult to access healthy foods. Thank you. So now, all of these experiences that we just talked about are rooted in racism and structural injustice, knowing that racism is a public health crisis and that several cities and counties have formally declared racism a public health crisis. What does it actually look like to treat racism with the same urgency we treat a disease outbreak? I'll start with you, is that okay?
I think it's a good thing to start with me because I'm going to start at a 35,000-foot level. Right now, I am obsessed with the connection between the threats to our democracy and the threats to our health. I think one and the same have got to be addressed. So what it looks like is to understand that health outcome equality is a total byproduct of justice. And the extent to which injustice is prevalent in these United States and in this District of Columbia is the extent at which health disparities and inequities will persist. And that's partly because of the questions that you just asked, right? Because as a lawyer, I think about how do you address that stress that I raised my hand to with respect to disproportionate policing and over-policing in the neighborhoods. When my kids started driving and went out at the first time that they had a license, like every parent, I was afraid for their safety because of their driving, but there was another layer on top of that. I was afraid for their safety because if they ran into a police officer, they could be dead, just because they ran into a police officer because of what they said. So my mental health allostatic load, right, the stress and the vigilance with which I live is totally different. So our democracy has to address policing inequality. It has to address environmental injustice, and it has to address it from a legal perspective. And the only way we do that is to fight, I think, for justice in voting, in marching, in legislating, in litigating. I think the partnership between urgent health interventions and law is the nexus I'd like to focus on.
Yeah, there are so many thoughts that come to mind when I hear that question. And when I speak, you all will hear that I'm a preacher, right? So if I start preaching at point, some might just say amen or hallelujah. I was a health system leader during the pandemic, right? I worked at a safety net hospital in Newark, New Jersey. And I arrived at that role after being recommended to lead the state health department in New Jersey. And I came up number 2 in that process, and I was so ready to take number 2. And my lieutenant governor, who is now in heaven above, Sheila Oliver, said, "Dr. Chris, you are nobody's number 2." And she was inviting me to step into an opportunity when we would be making so many decisions in organized or institutional healthcare that for the first time, we're dealing with the truth around racism in a more transparent way. I'll date myself so you can understand the transitions that I'm talking about. So I was in medical school from 99 to 2003. There were no towns talking about racism as a public health crisis. Very few people were mentioning the word racism, especially as it related to health outcomes, right? There was nobody spouting off Dr. Cameron Jones's definition. Racism is a system of structuring opportunity where one group, based on their phenotype, because of their privilege, has access to certain opportunities, and another group does not, based on their phenotype, not have access to those privileges, but the entire society as a whole is sapped. Nobody was saying that. Right? And nobody was really uttering the language of health equity. We were doing that work. So here I sit in my seat in Newark, New Jersey, in a city of rebellion, in a position that was there, that someone basically told me, "I've sent you there, or we've made a way for you to get there for you to do good trouble," right? And so when all of these health departments and institutions had the cover of a black man's death and blood to say that racism is a public health crisis. Why do I say that? Because we didn't say that until the public murder of George Floyd. To the other white executives around our C-suite table to say, "Oh, you know, should we release a statement, Dr. Chris, too, about racism?" And like I told them, the statements and the languages were only frames. It was more important for us, especially in Newark, New Jersey, to be doing the work because of the things that you said. The very hospital that I worked in was supposed to execute and deliver on the Newark Accords. And the Newark Accords were written between the citizens of Newark and the power structures in Newark after the Newark uprising and rebellion. And the hospital was supposed to hire a certain number of people. The hospital was supposed to invest a certain amount back into the city of Newark. The hospital was supposed to have services that dealt with the disproportionate burdens. And I found myself in 2019, 2020, 2021, and we still weren't achieving on that. So I am good that we are at a moment where we can have this honest conversation in public health and healthcare about why Black people continue to be at the lower end of health outcomes and disparities. But we, and all of us know this, We are not yet at a revolution of intention and will to do the work that is necessary to save Black lives, to save marginalized lives, and to disrupt caste. And the very last thing that I will say is that I've had this conversation back and forth with other physicians, right? Because that's how I was trained. And I don't know that a hospital or a health system is appropriately positioned to solve some of the issues that we need to solve because the will isn't there. And it's not until we usher in accountability that the will be acted upon, and that accountability is going to come through a demand. And remember, power concedes nothing without that demand.
I want to go back to those narratives, those statements that hospital CEOs and health systems released after George Floyd's murder. I work with hospital CEOs and boards all throughout the country, and I had at least 8 systems ask me to take a look at their statements, their anti-racism statements. Many of the statements were very well crafted, but you know what was missing? What are you going to do about it? How are you going to deploy assets to address the issue? How are you going to work in partnership with the community? My advice to these CEOs who could not respond to that question is don't release this statement. You're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready to do the work. So it's important and what I would also tell them is, if you don't do this work, all of these population health goals and objectives that you have, and you're going to miss the mark, because our system is going towards value-based care, keeping people well. Hospitals, health systems are incentivized to keep people well. That requires a whole different skill set. And so what we're doing is training this next generation of health professionals to have the language around why this is so important. And more importantly, why is this best for everyone? A lot of times we get so caught up in this narrative, it's this community we need to address. If we address the issues in a community that has been disproportionately burdened for generations, if we address those issues, surrounding neighborhoods will benefit. And so that's a different way of actually articulating this issue. And because of the current administration, it's an inflection moment for me. I'm going back, I'm thinking about how I have presented myself, and I'm critiquing the language that I've used and the way that I have approached this work, because I have not articulated it in the best interest of the greater good. And I think that's an opportunity for us, answering your question, so folks understand if we do this work, everyone will benefit in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you. Did you have more to add?
Yeah, just really quickly. So I think what is missing, right, is this in a nutshell. The language and the framing is good, but through the lens of systems and in particular hospitals, if racism is not considered a never event in the quality and safety rubric, meaning if hospitals can still be accredited, they can still be licensed while still doing disparate care, it's not going to change. It's not until it's factored, like just the way we're not supposed to discharge patients with a hospital-acquired infection, just the way we're not supposed to operate on the wrong side of the body. If I'm not held accountable as a healthcare institution for perpetuating racism in your care, then the language and the frames are always going to fall short.
Thank you. Thank you so much for answering that. I have a friend who works in DEI in a hospital, and the mission of his work is simply to cause less excess death. That's his work. And it's wild to be like, you're just trying to train doctors to care about our lives. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I want us to talk amongst ourselves a little bit, take in this information. So if you can look to your neighbor. Okay, cool. Check them out. That's cute. Okay, and now decide who is A and who is B. If there's 3 of you, you can go to C. It's okay. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I would like you to think a little bit about what they said. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to do some reflection to your partner. I'm going to ask A's to start. You're going to have 1 minute just about how this is landing, what you're thinking about, what this is bringing up for you. And then I'm going to switch to B's. Feel okay about this? While the A's are talking, B's are quiet. While the B's are talking, A's are quiet, yeah? C's, we'll get in where you fit in, you know what I mean? It'll be okay. All right, let's start with A's. Go ahead. How are you feeling? Gonna be different. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Wrap those conversations up. Tell them you appreciate their words. I'm not gonna stop talking, so it'll be harder to hear your partner. And we'll just keep going. Thank you all so much. And stop. Okay, so the next topic that we're gonna get into is about race and health and mortality. I particularly am gonna talk about anti-Black racism. Again, if this is uncomfortable for you, buckle up. It's important to particularly talk about anti-Black racism as distinct from racism because of the way that we see it impacting Black people so much in our communities. You can step outside, you can see that here in this neighborhood. And so I'm gonna also ask you some questions as they pertain particularly to race, anti-Black racism, and health. Okay, please put your hand up if you or someone you love who is Black have had their health issues minimized or ignored by doctors or medical professionals. Thank you. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love who is Black have been diagnosed late in their illness with little medical options remaining. Thank you. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love who is Black have not been given full health education specifically for issues impacting Black folks. Thank you. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love have seen Black people die from treatable and preventable conditions. Thank you. Take a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath. Exhale. Thank you. The data tells us that more than 1.6 million Black Americans would still be alive today if mortality rates had been equal over the last 2 decades. How and who do we hold accountable for that scale of preventable death? Can we start at the end? Sorry, okay, no, just kidding. Can we start in the middle? Okay, who wants, I just wanted to give it a different variety, but you could go ahead.
I'll go. I'll go. I first want to start with a brief story. So I told you all that I have POTS, right? I had had symptoms of postural orthostatic tachycardia my entire adolescence. By the time I got to UCLA, it's my first year of my surgical internship. I was still on the track to become a brain surgeon, right? I go home because I get the short end of the stick. I get the vacation early in the year. So I go home for a month, back to New Jersey. I come back to LA. I touch down. Within a week, I can't round my patients. I can't walk from my apartment, which is directly across the street from UCLA Hospital, without being short of breath. Ultimately, I pass out on rounds, and it starts a treacherous journey to getting a diagnosis. What is wrong with Chris? I remember doctors saying, oh, you're just stressed. I remember doctors, because at one point my mother flew out, saying, does she have pressure speech? And I'm like, my mother doesn't even know what pressure speech means. And I remember telling a physician, I know what you're doing. And he turned bright red. I said, you're minimizing my experiences as a Black woman, and I'm your peer, and it doesn't mean a thing to you. And before I went to my, let's say, my revelatory cardiology visit, where we were gonna say, this is what Chris has, I figured it out. I sat on my bed at UCLA, and I said, Chris, are you gonna die young? I don't know how many people have asked themselves that question, but I asked myself that question at 26. I said, Chris, are you going to die young? And if you are going to die young, how are you going to go out, right? I said, I'm going to figure out what's wrong with me. And that's when I arrived at, I think I have POTS. And at the same time, my father, who worked at Bell Labs, knew, and I'm going to declare her race and ethnicity, a white woman physician. And she said, sounds like Chris has POTS. If she needs me, tell her to call me when she speaks with the cardiologist so he will believe her. I'm a name drop for y'all. I'd already been to Princeton and graduated cum laude. I had already went to Duke University School of Medicine and completed with honors. And I found myself at UCLA, and somebody had to tell me in order for the doctor to believe me, I could cite another white woman, or I did better, I brought a journal article. That's why black people are dying. Because it is a system that, one, excuses the racism and the caste of the majority. It is a system that has weaponized care to undervalue, to ignore and disrespect the experiences of others based on their position in caste. And it was from that moment that I first started to be radicalized. I've been telling people I got radicalized during the pandemic. No, I got radicalized when I had to fight for my own diagnosis at UCLA with my cardiologist. And outside of that, imagine the patient who doesn't have the same agency that I have. Imagine how that asymmetry between the provider and the patient becomes so stark and actually weaponized, right? And where you can excuse the passing off of what this might be. The last thing that I will say, because I think we best learn through stories. I did everything in my power to get both of my parents to live to be 80. I didn't succeed. I came close, but I did not succeed. The cost of being black in the United States killed them. I remember a reporter asked me during the pandemic, do you really believe, Dr. Chris, that your father died from COVID, but it was due to racism? I said, yes. I've got the proof to show it. And one of the most harrowing experiences that my mom had, she died 2 years before my dad. She had severe Parkinson's. My mother was found to have a splenic artery aneurysm that was leaking blood into her gut. The night that my mother appeared in the ER from her rehab, I met her there. They woke me up in the middle of the night. I met her in the ER. I was sitting behind the door. The physician couldn't see me. The physician walked in. Before he said hello to my mother, before he examined her, he looked at the nurse. He said, don't hang an IV, don't draw blood. She's going back to the rehab. There's nothing wrong with her. Within a week, my mother was almost dead. I remember I fired him from that ER room that night. But again, what about the family that doesn't have the baby daughter that's the physician? What about the family that doesn't have the advocate? That's why black folks are dying, because systematically, through policies, through practice, and through culture, their lives and their experiences have been devalued. And I'm going to end here. That's why it has to be through the assurance principle to make systems. I'm going to hold you accountable if you don't achieve certain outcomes for these populations. That is the only way that the system will be able to reform itself or comply to the pressure of what the right thing is to do.
So I've always said I'm going to write a book titled The Miseducation of the American Citizen. Because, you know, I was born in D.C., but was educated in Kentucky and North Carolina. And boy, did I miss out. I missed out. So it's important for us to know our history. And I just want to do some self-promotion, and my colleague, Dr. Buckley's in the back. We worked together on this paper where we looked at the history of this city. We went all the way back to the year 1790, the formation of the federal district, and it's a retroanalysis. What we did was we identified historical milestones, policies, and practices that disproportionately burden black folks in this city, so that people can have a better understanding of why things are the way they are today. Now, we are using this paper in health professions education, because a lot of our nurses, our doctors, our healthcare, folks who are pursuing healthcare degrees are going to do work in this city, or they will have internships in this city. They need to be educated before we send them out. They need to understand the conditions in which people live. It helps them be much more compassionate. It helps them become much more aware of their biases. It helps them become more aware of systemic biases. We talk about implicit bias. I do a lot of work around systemic bias because it's the systems in which we live, learn, work, and play that really do drive behavior. And so I just want to just reinforce the importance of knowing our history. I do this lecture with med students every year. I remember the first time I did it, and I was unpacking a lot of what we're discussing right now. Now, I'm at Georgetown. It's a predominantly white institution. That's a whole nother story I want to talk about. I can talk about later around my journey as a dean at a predominantly white institution. But I talk to med students. It's a lecture on justice, social justice, health equity, and healthcare. The first year I did that, I had 7 white male students come up to me and say, Dr. King, they went to the best schools, private schools, and they said, no one has ever, ever laid it out like you did. I have a role to play. That's what they said. We have a role to play to address this. And I said, yes, you do. Absolutely. And I was working with them for a couple of years around some programming that's used for med students and nursing students. So these are examples of how we can be impactful in really helping people uncover their biases and disrupt mental models around how things have been. We have to interrogate the status quo. I say that a lot. Interrogate the system, critique the status quo, ask why we're doing work a certain way, and be sure that we are around people that have different lived experiences and narratives.
I'd like to suggest 2 things. One is an apology, because I once wrote a book that talked a lot about your experience. And at the point at which and the book still sells a lot. I hope you, it's called, what is it called? I've written a number of books, okay? What can I say?
Let's be clear. Let's be clear.
It's called Just Medicine. And what it did was think about the racism that Dr. Chris has experienced as an individual experience, and that's a mistake, right? It's not an irrelevant analysis that the physician looked at her, made a judgment about her mother in that individual place and time. But that is just the tip of the iceberg, because if we're going to try and change hearts and minds, it'll be till kingdom come that will actually make the kind of systemic change that will change that $1.6 million. So yes, we have to do that work on the individual level, and I have some ideas in that book, but let me raise our sights to a systemic level, right? For one thing, if you look at those of us on this stage, we are a very small minority of the healthcare workforce. That's a problem, right? That's a problem because the dyad between physician and patient is much more likely to yield culturally competent care, is much more likely to yield the kind of judgments that are not biased and prejudiced if I look at you and I see you as a human as opposed to as a statistic that I have no familiarity with. And that's Black people, that's Latino people, that's LGBTQ plus people, that's all people. And we don't have enough diversity in our workforce. One more level, and then I'll stop. If you look at the income disparities in Washington, D.C., all right, I'm just gonna start. Median household income for whites is $166,777 per household. Raise your hand if you think Black median incomes is half of that. A third of that. Black median incomes are the lowest racial groups in Washington, D.C. We make a median household income of $60,089. Alaskan Natives next, Native Hawaiians next, 2 or more races next, Latino Americans next. You see what I'm saying? Because the systemic problems that happen by the time you get to the hospital are informed way upstream, way before. They're informed in the difference of graduation rates so that you can produce these kinds of incomes. They're informed by you raising your hand and saying you can't buy fresh vegetables in your neighborhood. They are informed by the difference in the quality of the air that you breathe, the water that you drink, whether you have recreational spaces, and these are what we call upstream inequalities. They are systemic, and the racism that produces those differences ends you up in the hospital where you are, right? And the point I would like us all to consider is our individual roles in addressing systemic racism at any level you find yourself. If you are in a public school and you go to the PTA and you notice all of the parents are white, or all the little black kids are getting shunted off into the, what do they call, the educational classes for people who are, the lower educational classes are not getting the prep courses, say something. Do something about that, because that's an upstream reason for these income disparities. If you are going to the city council, talk about eviction and disparities in housing and housing quality. Talk about the environmental injustice of siting a plant or a trash disposal near you or a highway near you. Any level you find yourself at in these United States, you will find systemic racism. So we can all play a part in these health outcomes and turning them around.
Thank you.
Can I give them a quick tool? So at the NAACP Center for Health Equity, we did a national public health project called ACE Your Health. If you go to any search engine and you put in NAACP ACE Your Health, you'll find it. So we surveyed nearly 23,000 folks, predominantly black folks, across the United States. We focused a lot in 15 metropolitan areas. And what people revealed to us through that was not surprising, right? But it was illuminating. And so even within Black and African American communities where the people said, I do have access to a grocery store, I do have access to walkable streets, we still found that the burden of chronic stress or the burden of having chronic health conditions was lessening the quality of their life, right? And that chronic stress was due to a host of factors: economic, racism, challenges with caregiving and things of that nature. So as an accompaniment to that report, we developed a toolkit. And in that toolkit are all of the things that the dean is describing, right? How do you advocate at the hospital board? How do you advocate for the school board? How do you advocate before the zoning board, and why you should be doing those things, right? It talks about how do you write an advocacy letter. It talks about how do you do a neighborhood health audit, and you're looking at all of the things that are around you that you see today. And so I think it's very important that we continue to put in front of you tools, because we all know sitting up here and y'all know sitting out there, you can't train your way out of racism. Right? You can't train your way, you can't talk your way out of it. And I'm gonna drop two quick things real hot and back out, okay? Until we do reparations and until we have universal care, ain't a doggone thing gonna change.
Boom. Thank you. Facts.
I was just going to say, we just can't, all the stress that we're talking about, think about the physiological impact it has on the human body and the intergenerational impact. How does it impact DNA expression, premature aging, aging of the telomeres, right? This is also why people are dying early, right? So we have a tendency to just mark it off as cardiovascular disease or diabetes, and let's be clear, the toxic stress, chronic stress, kills people. It'll kill us. So the assignment for each of us is self-care. Please take care of yourselves. Please.
Thank you. So we are getting tight on time. So we're going to transition to questions from the audience, but I did a lot of prep work, so I'm still going to ask you my questions that I have. So that's just going to be a thing. So if you are interested in asking a question, start to form a line here. Actually, before that, sorry, really quick, because that was a lot. Turn to your A or your B and tell them you appreciate them.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, go ahead and make your way to the questions. I had 2 more questions for these folks. One was about access to hospitals and access to health, and the other one was about community. I would like to ask those questions, the questions that I have for the audience, if that's okay around those, and then let you know what the questions were if you want to answer them in tangent with the other ones. Okay, so these ones are for y'all, yeah? Ready? Okay. Please put your hand up, and this is about access to hospitals. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love lives in a neighborhood that has a hospital that you feel safe going to. Remember, pay attention to hands. Thank you. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love lives close to a hospital or university that attracts top medical professionals, like these folks. Thank you. Please put a hand up if you or someone you love are currently sitting about a block away from a psychiatric hospital that has a history of mistreating and experimenting on Black people, abusing them and having its own graveyard of inhabitants. All hands. All hands, all hands. Thank you. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love lives in a city where that same medical facility is supposed to also house ICE's headquarters. Okay, thank you. So the question for that one was about medical deserts, and that as hospitals close in Black and brown neighborhoods while expanding in wealthy ones, how do we get our care? So I'm gonna go to the next ones real quick. Is that okay? Just because of time. Okay. Community as medicine are the last questions. If you or someone you love have had their health improve through connection, quality time with friends, neighbors, or family, please put your hand up. Thank you. Please put your hand up if you or someone you love have seen your mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual health improve through interacting with your culture, music, stories, food, etc. Thank you. And then please put your hand up if you or your organization or your organizations you know about have improved their staff or community joy and happiness through investing in intentional fun, activities, games, laughter, community, etc. Thank you. And the question about that was community as medicine. But is it okay if we go to the line and then you all can answer? Thank you all for answering my questions. Go ahead, Allison.
Good morning, I think. So thank you to everyone who's putting this event on. So my question, while we have you all here, I'm Allison Kreiner Brown, she, her. So I'm here with my hat with the Mayor's Office of Racial Equity. So we do racial equity training for DC government. So I really appreciate the conversation about the systemic interaction all the way down to the individual in those one-on-one experiences. My question for you all, since you are in the medical and medical training spaces, when it comes to racial bias, what are you finding are some of the better and more promising training techniques? Because we have to do the systemic work, and at the same time, the doctor that you see is the doctor that's in front of you. So are there any sort of promising practices, resources? I found the paper that you said, thank you for mentioning that. So just curious on how we're preparing, specifically in the medical field, what are we finding are some of the better practices when it comes to racial bias?
Okay, the one thing we have to avoid is thinking that this is a one and done problem, that you just do one training and we're done, right? Because bias is something that's fed every single day by our environment. It's fed by the movies we see, the radios we listen to, the songs, what we hear on the news. And so the most effective training has a characteristic of repeating over and over again a basic deprogramming, quite frankly, right? It also has a second characteristic, so it's not one and done. Think HIPAA, right? HIPAA privacy compliances are something that you have to recertify regularly. Anti-bias training only works if you recertify it over and over again, okay? So secondly, another characteristic of trainings that actually work to reduce bias are trainings that require you to have hard conversations with people you are not used to being with. So you have to journal. You have to go for an extended period of time, 2 weeks, 14 days, maybe even longer, a whole semester, where you're in interaction with people who disagree with you and have real conversations about their experiences. You journal it, you process it, you confront it, and you don't do it just once a year. The third characteristic of things that actually work have to do with who's standing in front of the room, who you actually see. So counterfactuals to what you see in the news on TV and movies about who has authority, right? The fact that he's the dean, and he's the dean every single day that everybody goes to school in his school, and he gives the grade, and he gives the diploma, this changes your orientation for who can and cannot give you knowledge, who can and cannot be your equal, who can and cannot be considered intelligent. So what we had was a mistaken belief that we could do these fast little trainings, right? And that they would quickly get rid of bias. No, it has to be a long, protracted commitment to eliminate bias all through the experience of medical care.
And can I add two quick things? So when I was doing, excuse me, my education at Duke, our dean, that's the power of deans, not only did she go about to recruit and to accept the most diverse and inclusive class that Duke had ever seen, so much so that patients would remark, wow, I've never seen this many black people at Duke Hospital when we were rounding their rooms. They would just say that freely. But we started to bring in residents from Durham into the medical education process, and they would do storytelling. They would tell us their experiences. We would have to sit in our amphitheater and listen and learn from them. So that was one way, giving a voice to people whose lived experiences are disparate in the larger caste system. Two, at Rutgers, they really had a strict and strong policy of sharing power with medical students, and medical students were able to report if they saw bias, discrimination, or racism happening, because oftentimes you can't correct your higher up in the medical environment. The culture doesn't support it. So they would have a confidential way for those students to say, this is what I saw today, or this is what I witnessed or experienced. And then, I'm losing my breath. The last thing that I wanted to say is in the training process, there has to be a requirement. I don't think you can do it without it being a requirement, because I once had another executive tell me, I don't need people to come in here and teach my residents around white supremacy. That was his quote to me. But there has to be a requirement in the training process, and this is what's directly under assault right now, that people have to know the history of the community they serve. So if you're training in DC, you have to know the history of the communities in DC. If you're training in Newark, you have to know the history of the communities in Newark.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay if we go to the next question? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to continue on with this thought on education and knowledge. All black doctors ain't black. And part of that isn't necessarily because their heart isn't black, it's because they've been taught a Eurocentric education. So we gotta keep rolling, keep digging. How do we rewrite the DSM-5? How do we rewrite the OBGYN education? How do we write cardiology for us? And who's doing that work?
That's awesome.
That was
That's a great question. So we're doing the same thing at Georgetown. I can't tell you how many times students have come to me and said they had a faculty member actually pathologize race, right? Because you are black, then you XXXXX. We tell our students when that happens, bring it up. It's unacceptable. Race should not be pathologized. It is a social construct. It is the conditions in which we live, learn, work, eat, and play. So what we have to do is rethink, and even when it comes to research, how we conduct our research, how we tell the story, requires a whole different, again, competency, and that's important, and that's what we're doing. But I can't tell you it happens all the time, and it's because, and it's not just white faculty that do it. Like you said, it's because of the way that we've been trained. Yeah. I think about James Merriam Sims, the father of gynecology. Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy, I always say their names. Those were the enslaved women whose bodies were used to help us understand how female, that is a story that has to be told. We must lift up the names Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy, and it needs to be done in medical school so students understand why in case studies race continues to be pathologized. And they, again, there's a study that was done just about 8 years ago where they looked at residents and med students, and many of them still felt like, or they were self-reported that black skin is thicker than white skin. 2017, black skin is thicker than white skin. Black folks experience pain differently. And did someone actually tell them that in the classroom? No, not necessarily, but it's just deep-seated in the way that the education is actually delivered. And so we have to do work in this space and call it out.
One of the dirtiest little secrets is that black doctors have the same level of bias as white doctors do. So those kinds of misapprehensions and misunderstandings about thickness of skin and bleeding and tolerance for pain. What's the DSM-5 diagnosis? Self-hatred, right? Cultural trauma. And what we do about it, it's a work that continues on and on. That's why I love those community questions, because one of the things that thwarts the attack on us is our persistent joy and our persistent ability to continue to overcome no matter what comes our way. I think it makes people so angry. That's why the backlash is so fierce, right? Love it.
And can I just add one other tool? They have an example of a commission that looks to remove race-based clinical algorithms. And their model is a model that other local health departments can follow. The NAACP, we wrote a resolution to make sure our field, our members understand what a race-based clinical algorithm is, meaning your kidney function is different because you're black. Your lung function is different because you're black. Whether or not you can deliver vaginally after having a C-section, I make a different recommendation because you're black. And we know that those are all fallacies. Those are not biological truths because, like you said, race is a social construct. So there is a concerted effort in public health and healthcare right now to educate the community. Clinicians are working on it, but to educate community on what those race-based equations are so that they can begin to advocate against their removal. Otherwise, professional societies, schools, and other practitioners, there is a growing I would say a growing population where we've been either able to eliminate the use, so now kidney function is evaluated on a more realistic level, frames about whether your cardiovascular risk is different based on your lived experiences, and the lived experiences rooted in your blackness now give more informed recommendations around when you need to start medication versus when lifestyle habits can continue. So the New York City Department of Health, if you look it up, it is a great model around removing race-based clinical algorithms.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for this great conversation. If you all have more questions in the audience, please feel free to find these folks or me. I don't really have much to say, but thank you.
So I am Ayanna Bennett, the Director of DC Health, and I wanted us to be here because this is a really important conversation for us and for DC as a whole. So we have, I feel like I'm speaking to the choir in this space. These are people who do this work already and really understand some of the underlying principles. So I want to bring forward one thing that I want you to actually leave thinking about. We have a real balancing act to do as people who work in this space, who are trying to achieve health equity. We have to try to stop what's happening in the long-term, systemic, deeply rooted problems that are creating our present. And we also have to deal and help the people who are needing us now. And those can be two ends of a rope that we kind of pull on, and it can be a difficult struggle. We have to do both. We have to take care of the world that the little 7-year-old is growing up in, so that housing, education, lack of food, resources don't impact negatively the capacity for health that he has in an adult. We want to stop those forces. At the same time, if we do nothing but that, he will not get an 80-year-old grandpa. He will not get a mom who survives to help him with his children. He will not get the life that is more than just his own health. So we are going to have to really live in that tension and make sure that we are all at the table for the conversation. We've had some folks who are on the healthcare side who really have some struggles to deal with. We know that when you change that renal algorithm, that people get years taken off their weight for their kidney. We know that partly because local hospitals have done it. Don't know if they told you about it, but they've done it. They told me. We know that there are things that we can do. We're coming into a season where there's going to be more for us to do. Some of our federal resources have either been gone or been threatened in taking care of people. Medicaid is going to go through some real changes. We're going to have to do something about that because the health of the people who actually are experiencing the disparities right now is our job. So getting all of those people who are leaving, potentially being forced off of Medicaid into something else, and DC did that. The basic health plan has taken 16,000, 17,000 people who otherwise would have just been dropped and put them onto a $0 private plan. That is better than the alternative. So every time one of these challenges comes up, it's going to behoove us to make sure, even in the pace they're giving us, because sometimes they're telling me something's gone yesterday, even at that crazy pace, it's going to take community advocacy, attention, real creativity on the part of bureaucrats who maybe that's not their regular job to be creative, to make sure that we can keep pushing forward for the people who are experiencing the disparity now, while at the same time pushing on our economic development, pushing on housing, pushing on all of those things that we have spent the last 40 years telling ourselves are causing the problem. So that public health dilemma that everybody tells you about pulling people out of the river in order to tell the person who's throwing them in to cut it out, there is never a place where it's okay to let people drown, because you have a theory. So we are going to keep pulling people out of the river, and we're also going to send other people upstream to figure out how to stop this. That is why there are enough of us in the space. So nobody is doing the entire job, but if you don't know people on both sides of that fence, you're probably only doing a limited amount of your job. So our hospital, medical school, really clinically based folks have to know the people on the community side because, for one thing, a lot of the funding and connections and patients who are not necessarily going to be found in community need to get connected through the hospitals and the healthcare facilities. On the community side, they have to know the healthcare, because if you think you're just doing prevention, I'm not sure what you think you're going to do with the members of the family who already need care. I guess you're just going to talk to the 20-year-old and ignore his mom. That doesn't make sense. You need to be able to connect people to clinical care so that they can be taken care of. So we are going to continue together in this push and pull, and these kinds of spaces where we come all at once to talk about what each side is doing are really important. We're about to hear about the community care part of it, and many of you are on that side. I'm hoping you heard about the healthcare part of it and feel like there's some room for connection. We're doing lots of convenings and bringing people in to talk, but all of this is, for me, about us in the health equity space declaring ourselves done with talking. I talked for a good 15 years. I don't know how many health equity trainings I did. And what we are moving to is, what is the thing that you are doing to stop that problem you just described in ad nauseum detail for the last 15 years? So We have examples of that. That kidney change is a real example. Don't complain about the history, change the present. We've done other things in the department. We're trying to help all of our FQs and others do a better job of finding and keeping our Black cancer patients, because they're not making it to the end from screening to diagnosis to treatment. And for at least breast cancer, our gap of somewhere around 50 to 60 days from the time you got your screening to the time you actually got to a doctor who can actually make a plan for you is down to 20 plus days. That's a big deal. That's sleepless nights of I don't know what's wrong with me. And we should be able to do that, because whenever we're doing something and it's not quite right, the system is doing it right for a lot of other people. So people are quickly getting to the doctor somewhere in some part of the system. It's just, can we extend that level of quality to everybody? The same is true on the systemic policy parts. So, for example, it's been about 15 years that people have been complaining about the social work exam having a massive racial bias that no one was doing a lot to change. The test was declared to have this problem and then unchanged for a decade, at least. We had a lot of social work advocates in this town advocate very strongly just to dump it. And eventually we did. It took us about a year to get it together, but the test was taken off of the requirements last July. So now all of our social work graduates who come out this fall are going to start with their license. But what we did was not just dump it. What we did is say those first 2 years, you're going to find a supervisor who's going to make sure you get a breadth of experience and is going to document that you have all the competencies. I personally think the radical statement is, why are we so sure testing is the way? Most of the time, the people who invented the test had some investment at the time this regime was put in place of only some people passing it. There was some investment in that. So looking for more creative ways, taking the radical step of saying, let's just do it differently than we did before. So 360, I think, is the number of people who has social work degrees but were not licensed in DC applied within 3-4 months. And so we now have 300 plus new social workers who we did not have. And the reality is over 80% of them are Black. And so we are fixing our racial disparities in social workers, and we didn't do that much. We took away a barrier. If we really do the thinking about all of the policies that we keep saying the system is what's perpetuating it, it's not the historical system. It's the current system. It's never history. History sits there. It's whether or not we let it continue. That is the thing. So we're going to look at some community care models of what people are doing to try to innovate in community. I'm hoping that innovation and the clinical innovation come together, and that you hear an idea today of something that you can consider doing differently. Because if we are not doing things differently, it is crazy to think anything's going to change. So I'm hopeful. Let's talk.
Step Africa to the floor. Oh, step Africa. We got some here, but we need some more. Oh, step Africa. Come step Africa to the floor. Oh, step Africa. We got some here, but we need some more. Oh, step Africa. Come step Africa to the floor. Oh, step Africa. We got some here, but we need some more. Oh, step Africa, come step Africa to the floor. Oh, step Africa, got some here, but we need some more. Oh, step Africa.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. How you all feeling today? I know you just ate, and I know you have some more energy. So how you all feeling today? There we go. We're in Step Africa, and we're gonna play a real easy game. So listen close. When I say okay, you say all right. When I say all right, you say okay. Okay. All right. Okay. 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 All right. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Oh, okay. Y'all better sing. All right. Okay. All right.
Everywhere we go, every time we do a show, other people want to know how we make them say. It's not hard or a magical trick, it's just some simple beats that go like this. 4 claps. 4 claps. Come on. This side. I want to hear you on the 1, 2, 3. Come on. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, just like that. 1, 2, 3. In the middle, you got 5, 6, 7. Watch this. Try it. One more time. It's your turn. You got it? Oh. Just clap. Come on, it's okay. Just clap. Hey, just clap. You sound good, y'all. Just clap. Come on. Bring it down low. Bring it down low. Come on. Hey, bring it down low. Woo, bring it down low. Hey, so what we came to do, y'all? I said what we gonna do, y'all? What we came to do, y'all? Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, get higher.
Bring the beat down.
All right, everyone, did you enjoy yourselves? Did you have some fun? Because you were just as much part of this show as we were. So great job to you all. Clap it up for yourselves. So we want to thank you all for having us. That was just a quick sneak peek of who we are. We are Step Africa, based right here in Washington, D.C. Travel all over the world, promoting and showing and educating everyone on the art form of stepping as well. So you can follow us on all social media platforms under the handle @StepAfrica. We do spell Africa with a K. Or you can visit our website, www.stepafrica.org, to see upcoming shows and tour dates as well. Now, before we go, we want to play one more game with you all, because we love to go out rocking and having fun. So is that okay? Can we play one last game with you all? So I need you all to clap your hands. Hey, now we played this game a little earlier, not too long ago, so you might remember. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Okay, okay. All right, all right. All right, all right. Okay, okay. Okay, all right. All right, okay. All right, okay. Okay, all right. Oh, 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 okay. Oh, all right. Oh, oh, all right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Hey, essay. Break it down.
Good afternoon, family. Good afternoon. Welcome to our final segment, or at least panel for the day, featuring a conversation among brothers. I think the first panel was all sisters. The last panel is all brothers. Conversation about issues related to economic justice, community wealth, and matters all between and all around these important topics. I think I know a lot of folks in the room, but just in case I don't agree with his politics, but I like his hip hop, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Ronnie Galvin. I'm here today as a senior fellow with the Greater Washington Community Foundation and as a member of the team that Tonya and Marla have put together to guide the work of the Health Equity Fund Network and the 140 grantees who are working to make health equity and economic justice the prevailing reality in Washington, D.C., and to do it so beautifully, wonderfully, and powerfully that the day will come where we don't have to do it anymore and we could just live and be free. If you're feeling that, say yeah. I have the honor, and y'all just don't know how much of an honor it is and a privilege of moderating this important discussion between these two black men, each holding national and even international renown on a broad range of subjects related to the economic challenges that we're facing and the future of our well-being. Andre, Derek, we're in the barbershop, so I'm gonna put the title down.
If that's the case, call me Dre.
Dre! It's always a Dre. It's always a Dre. It's always a Dre, right? I've been following both of y'all's work for years. And when I found out, when Marla asked me to help facilitate this panel, she didn't know how much of a gift it was. And I just want to say this in front of this crowd, God, the ancestors, and the universe. I'm a groupie of both of you. I just let you know. I'm a groupie.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a groupie. The work that y'all have done to help our people see, right, has been amazing. And I just want to say Tonya, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago when I was over at the Democracy Collaborative. We were doing economic systems change work. And you said to me, you said, hey, I know you're trying to do it for black and brown people, indigenous people over there. If it doesn't quite catch over there, come over here, let's try it. And it just so happened that Tonya had assumed the leadership of the foundation, and Tonya, I want to give you a lot of credit for this, set us on a course to close the racial wealth gap and advance economic mobility in Washington, D.C. And there were a lot of myths that we had to debunk. There were a lot of people who said, you must be out of your mind to even be thinking about that. And Dre and Derek, it's always a Derek too, right? I just want you to know, and Diedrich, who's not here, Diedrich Muhammad, who couldn't be with us, we drew heavily on your work, right? On your papers, your writings. We were YouTube, anything we could find from y'all to help make the case. And here we are 6 years into the strategy, and we have you before our community, and we just want to collectively say thank you for helping us get here, and we hope that what we do here today will help us get over there, right where we're trying to get. So can we give them a round of applause? All right, so our first panel was about AI, and Marla, loved the question that you asked about protagonists or antagonists. I think it got a lot of energy. Iris led, put your hand in the air like you just don't care, Iris. Our second panel on health equity. This panel is titled Barbershop Economics, Building Community Wealth. Andre, I don't know if you still go to the barbershop. You got a nice beard over there. You got a nice beard. Like, I don't have no hair over here. I don't have no hair.
Well, I've been cutting my own hair for...
Me too, right. Now this brother right here, he got the fro. He got the fro. So you look like you just stepped out the barbershop. You just stepped out the barbershop. But I want you to say a little bit more about yourselves, your work, what's on your mind. But as you do so and introduce yourself to the family here, I want you to also talk about, remember like when we used to go to the barbershop, who was in the barbershop and what was the energy like? Just to kind of bring folks into that energy and space here, and then we'll get into kind of our Q&A with each other. So Andre, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'm Andre Perry, senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, but I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And there was a barber shop right down the street from me, just 2 blocks away. And there was a person, his name is Charlie's Barber Shop. And I was informally adopted. And so my mother was struggling at the time. An older woman took me in. My father was murdered in prison. And so when I would go to the barber shop, that was really my opportunity to be surrounded by men of the community. And back in the day, the barbershop was truly a neighborhood community place. You could find the storekeeper, the banker, the basketball player, all get in a cut. And I would sit down a little bit nervous when I could remember, very nervous, because back in the day you had the Playboy magazines on the table. You had the cussing, the loud talk, and for me, but I got to see men be men, engage in rich conversation about politics, sports, relationships, and I just remember that fond energy that I tried to bring to my son, because I do take him to a barber shop, and it's very different now. You go get an appointment. I mean, back in the day, you would sit in a barber shop for all day long and wait. But I just remember great energy because it was a place where men could convene and talk and share. So just great energy.
Yeah. I mean, first off, got to recognize this setting. This is such a beautiful setting. And first time I ever had a panel where I literally get to sit in a barbershop chair. These are comfortable. All the panels should have these. but really grateful for that introduction and that partnership. That, I can say where I am in life is I feel like I have purpose, and my purpose is trying to make this a better world. So win, lose, or draw, when I wake up in the morning, whatever I see, we just saw the gutting of voting rights. The thing that keeps me going is purpose, because I really believe that that things actually can change, and there are pathways, and we can actually come up with a better, more just world. What my recollections of the barbershop? First and foremost, as a kid, I hated going to get my hair cut. So I would cry in the chair, and they'd have to give me.
That's why you got an afro now. That's why you got an afro now.
Yeah. But the discourse in the barbershop is, for me, I find myself being critical of the discourse in the barbershop. Black people often have a self-help approach, and perhaps in a ironic way, a personal responsibility motive, and that often came out in the barbershop. I ain't gonna get too barbershop talk, because I know this is being taped, so I ain't gonna get myself on record swearing. But you often hear the narratives of Ray needs to act better. Pookie needs to hold his head up high. All those narratives, the tropes we see in the media and everything like that, which I find, I get it. Nobody wants to be a victim, and people want to be able to uplift themselves. But in my role as an economist and trying to understand structures, in an ironic way, what is really pernicious is we have a society and a structure that through deprivation exploits motivation. And I can tell you what I mean by that. When we look at the subprime crisis, when we look at sometimes for-profit colleges, when we look at things like credit scores, it is often those individuals that are really trying to make something of their lives that often end up with products that are exploitive, extractive, and taking. And that's an effed up society. That is exploiting somebody's motivation in a way to get some financialization gain. So I guess I got to put a button on this so we can get to the next question and next comment. But I got a little comedy in that I might have an afro, but I didn't get the memo about the socks. I got plain old socks.
That's what's up.
One other thing about the barbershop, I have to interject. At the time when you're young, you don't know how they became barbers. But the barbershop was also a place where the formerly incarcerated got their jobs. Yep. They were trained. It was one of the few places that would accept them. And so some of the tropes you would hear is really, you would also hear a lack of education in some cases, a lack of awareness. But for me, I also recognize that many people were trying to come up, and this was their one opportunity to come up. And so I also take that with me, that barbershops are just a mixture of places, but you also see the struggles of a community in the barbershop.
Yeah. And just to double down on that point, anybody that's trying to better themselves and work hard to do better, that's not the critique I'm leveling. What I'm leveling is a structure that exploits that.
Yeah.
So, a formerly incarcerated person trying to come up through the barbershop, and you do see that a lot, right? That's a good thing. But the jail system itself, when you have structures of people that really aren't satisfied with mediocrity, we have pathways that sometimes lead people to the prison, incarceration. And that is what we need to change and address, a structure that facilitates that pipeline.
So I want to thank Marla and the team for framing this conversation in the context of the barbershop. Because if we look at kind of the discourse and some of the outcomes we're seeing, particularly in the democracy, set the economy aside, like some of these kind of distinctions we're making between like personal behavior and responsibility and the role that structures play, how do we like make that come alive in places like the barbershop? Because they vote too, right? And so that's the spirit of this conversation, right? How do we, like, what would this conversation look like in the context of a barbershop? So one other thing that I've noticed, we have the benefit of being the last panel. With the two panels before us, the questions from the audience and the energy that y'all are bringing is amazing. And that's not surprising because we have 140 of the most brilliant, committed, thoughtful, incisively thinking leaders in the city, in this room, and in this network. And so if you have a question or a comment, I want to invite you to start lining up at the microphone now. And even though you might not be here on stage, we're going to invite you in as early as possible so we get that energy from the room. So if you want to react to something, or you want to agree, disagree, okay then, go ahead, dear brother, yeah. And introduce yourself. Oh, wait, turn on the mic.
There it is, just get
Is it on? Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Mustafa Abdul Salam, and for a number of years I've been facilitating the Ward 8 Community Economic Development Planning process in this community.
Yes.
And it's important that we define this community because this is really the bottom line around gentrification, not only in this region, but in the country. And you see that as you drive around this community. It also has 42% of the children under poverty. So when we talk about changes that need to be made, this is a classic example. What this community has done in the last couple of years is create its own planning process, and it actually has a strategy from the community talking about their priorities and the direction they want to go, a common vision. And through that, we have created a think tank to actually facilitate that information that came out of the report. So the question I have is how, as a community, we're able to tap into the kind of brilliant expertise that you guys bring to the table in ways that we haven't been done. There's a disconnect. The struggles that we have in this community, we've got to find a way to benefit from the knowledge base that you guys have accumulated in a way that we can benefit. So I would like for you to speak to that.
That's good. So so the gap between like the great ideas, so you're at the New School, of course, you're at Brookings and the Uplift Center, great ideas, great scholarship, things that can inform new models. How do we actually connect that to what's happening on the ground? And where do we actually see that happening, maybe even? Good question, Mustafa.
First I'm going to applaud what it is you're doing. The gentrification and building power in general comes from collective action and being organized. The problems are more political than they are economic. That if we want to develop a community, why do we try to bribe others to come into the community with capital by giving them capital to come? Why don't we use that capital and direct it at you with your great ideas and build it up, right? That's the broad approach. And we get there with collective action, right? So to answer your question more directly, I'm here for it. This forum that we're doing right now is setting it up. So I have an institute that and got to give my shameless plug. It's called the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy. Our website is racepowerpolicy.org. So there are ways to connect, but it is our mission. I think this is true for all of us. Well beyond knowledge creation, I'm committed to converting it into action. And then here's the other point, public engagement and partnership to build change. So I'm here for it. We just certainly need the mechanisms to make sure that we're doing it.
Well, I just want to say, not to put Tonya or Marla on the spot, but community foundations are specifically designed to facilitate those connections.
Yep.
And so I've definitely seen an opportunity here, and I love when Tonya nods her head. That means she says, yes, keep going. So, yeah, Andre.
Yeah, and it's about partnership, and the Community Foundation, Greater Washington Community Foundation is doing that. It's about connecting the local with the national. Brookings Institution is in DC. We are a DC organization. We are charged not just to provide policy insights to the country, to the world, but to you too. So it's incumbent upon me to make sure I connect with you in some kind of way. Now, the Greater Washington Community Foundation and the Health Equity Fund in particular, from my understanding, they are doing that. They create the kind of incentives that will enable Brookings or another organization to work with a community group. So we just need to do more of that. Like Derek said, that we're here for a reason. And I can say this on behalf of Derek. I mean, so much of our work is based on partnership. I mean, we
don't get to speak for me.
Well, I will.
That's what happened in the barbershop too. I can speak for myself. I speak for myself.
But we work together. We write together. We are organizing together, and that's just the way that we function. We can't do our job unless we're connected to you. A lot of folks know me from the housing work. The reason why my housing work pops is because I'm talking to residents about their experience, garnering that information, putting it in a report, getting it to Congress, getting it to state and local officials. That's the way it's supposed to work. So the more we can create the kind of spaces like this that are authentically partnering with people, the better. It always helps if you have some money to bring people together and to actually do some work.
More shameless plugs here.
But we can do this, and so I'm glad you asked that question.
I mean, the question is about power building, which I think is where we need to be. Ideas are valuable, useful, but we also got to have power. So the part of the equation is, I get paid, and my luxury is I get to think about economic vision. I think you need both. You need policy, you need vision, and you need to build power. Here's something else I'm going to say. There's money power, and there's people power.
That's right.
And I got to say, we need to start thinking about collective bargaining, collective organizing, unions. And if you're, I think the union movement today is not the same union movement of the past, but one of the good things about unions as a mechanism for organizing is that it's very democratic. So even if you don't like the existing union, if you're able to be a part of it, you get to dictate and determine what it is. But ultimately, we got to be building power.
Nice, nice. Thank you, Mustafa, for that question. And please keep them coming. So I want to step all the way back and do some level setting. When Tonya and Marla convened, I don't know if Wendell Johns is still here. Wendell Johns is on the board of the Health Equity Fund Committee. We were trying to figure out, the initial frame was health equity. And somewhere in that conversation, the assertion came that we can't do health equity unless we also do economic justice, right? The two are linked, right? And so it seems common sense to us, but a lot of folks don't make that connection, right? And so first question from me is, how would you define economic justice? What is it? And here's the curveball. And is it really possible? You started talking about you believe what's possible, Derek, but is it really possible in a system that is built for maximum extraction from Black people, indigenous people, anyone that's not elite, so-called white, Christian, hetero, patriarch, sexist, violent, planet-killing humanity? Is it possible to achieve economic justice? And why should we even believe that, given all that we've tried already?
Well, I'll start. For me, how I define health equity in particular.
And economic justice.
And economic justice.
And all I'm going to say is what he said.
Now he can speak for you. He can speak for you now.
I know what it looks like. It looks like people living out their natural life. When people have the resources they need to thrive, this is another shameless plug. In my book, Black Power Scorecard, we ran some numbers to look at the most important factors on life expectancy. The wealth category represents 50% of the variance, the 50% of the reason why you live long or not. Particularly home ownership, business ownership, income. And when people have these things, they live out a long life. And these are things that are achievable. In many places across the country, many black people have these things. No, it's not everywhere. And in particular, I don't always say that the imperative is to close the wealth gap, because that's a different question. For me, it's about living a long life and having the resources you need to thrive. And so very simply, that's how I define it in terms of economic justice, health equity. I want you to be able to live. And what is also, I do need to say, when you don't have the adequate amount of resource, life becomes very short. You know, and we see it separated by mileage. You see it in terms of different counties and different things. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the income, the housing, the clean air, the corridors, the neighborhood supports, then you're not going to thrive. So that's how I define it, being able to live a long life.
Yeah. And I'm up here trying to make jokes. I don't know how successful I am, but in all seriousness, the way we started about being in partnership and working together, even when there is disagreement, we need to model that, and we are. So I just want to shout out the friendship with both of y'all and also the commitment together, because that's not trivial, that's important, that solidarity is going to be our salvation. There's so much in the world that encourage us to compete with each other and try to demonstrate why we're the ones and they're not. That's not going to lead to the solution that we want to get to. But to answer the question, the two paramount indicators of well-being, in my view, of economic well-being are health, quality health, and wealth. And what's important about them is the agency that they provide. So, you know, we say health equity, perhaps even a better concept is health agency. So then to answer the question about how I define economic justice is grounded in the economists Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum's notions of capabilities. That I define justice in capabilities. We think about people in two dimensions. We consider them inputs into a production process, so labor. And that's part of who we are, but not completely who we are. And we also see them as consumers. Consumers to whom we offer income to satisfy their consumption habits. I think the essence of humanity is a lot more than that. I think we want to produce. I think we want to do things. I think the concept of justice is the ability, the capabilities to contribute to ourselves, our community, and society writ large. So my concept of justice is measured and determined by agency, by capabilities. That's just to me. The two other points about extraction in our society, can this ever actually happen? I think yes. I think it is good to look at history and find that paradigms have changed. The common sense of society has not been static. We can look back at periods like the New Deal, like coming out of World War II. If we look at a global scale, we had this concept of, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, a notion of human rights. Prior to World War II, that conception of rights and people, however inadequate we are in administrating it, didn't really come to fruition. If we look at the last pandemic and think about the ways in which we governed the pandemic versus the Great Recession, and I know many people lost relatives and lives of people, so I don't want to diminish the tragedy of what took place during the pandemic. We were faced with unemployment levels that were not just black, but across the board that we hadn't seen since the Great Depression. We were faced with a global plague. We had the shortest recession on record. The economy bounced back compared to the Great Recession. It took 10 years to recover. We implemented a policy apparatus that sent checks directly to the American people. We implemented a policy apparatus that said, if you keep your payroll, we'll give you a loan that's going to be fully forgivable. That's essentially a job guarantee for those people that already had a job. We implemented a policy apparatus directed at rights and people. It was not perfect, but that gives me hope. And you know why it happened? I'm going to get a little barbershop-y.
Go ahead.
Joe Biden is also the same president that was the architect of that crime bill that led to mass incarceration. He should also get credit for his intervention during the pandemic. The reason in my mind why Joe Biden did that is because we didn't ask, we made him do it. And that's not a bad thing. Power was built up. It was Black Lives Matter. It was the Me Too movement. It was people willing to go on the streets during a pandemic and literally risk their lives, the youth. I believe that in that moment, there was a common sense, a rhetoric that compelled our government to act in ways that led to salvation, not complete salvation, but improvement. So I'll sum it up and basically say, the question of can we, that's a question of power. It is a question of when we build enough power to not ask, but to demand in a common sense way.
Wow. Thank you for that. Looks like we have another question coming.
All right, I think I'm just about a distance there. Right, Edmund Morris, Equality Chamber of Commerce. Long question. So we were talking about fishing people out of the river while also going upstream, right? So for the agency issue and the wealth component of it, one of the challenges we run into a lot seems to be when we
Can you step closer to the mic? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we go. So when we're talking about economic agency and we're talking about household wealth, because that's often how it's measured, it's often how it's wielded. We always talk about earnings and savings, but we don't often talk about investments and use of credit. A responsible use of revolving credit, that is, because we talk about people and their debt problems, but that's separate. And since we've lived in an environment now for the last 50 or 70 years where the return to capital has been way greater than the return to labor, where earnings have fallen so far behind the cost of living that people often have to rely on that credit, and they can't earn their way out, they have to invest their way out. What are we looking at in terms of things on the ground in the moment to help the individuals and households make use of those other tools of capital, especially as AI is getting ready to ramp up that gap between the return to capital and the return to labor, so that as we fix the policy things, as we double down on those programs that we've seen work at the upstream and work at the neighborhood level, at the society level, that those people in the river still have something to fish themselves and their friends out.
Man, brothers asking deep questions in the barbershops these days, man. We asked these questions when I was coming up.
Exactly. I don't know what kind of barbershop this is. I mean, the question is, I don't know where the person went, but the notion of assets as opposed to just incomes, I think is spot on. But I'm also going to say maybe we should expand our conception of what investment is. We, right now, in my view, the reason we have a lot of the problems that we have is the result of a public infrastructure, which is our government, which is our political economy, that over-invest in profit and speculation and under-invest in the capacities of people. And I'll try to make that cogent and give some examples of what I'm trying to describe. But why is it, I'm clear, I love it. All right, there it is. Fist bump. Why is it that on a budget ledger, a public budget, and resources going towards firms are always considered investments? And they come in the form of a variety of ways. Could be tax deductions, could be tax subsidies, but resources going towards people we treat as costs. We treat people as entities to which we should manage their subsistence as a cost on our ledger rather than assets for which we should invest. In my conception of a well-functioning economy, people are both the point and the purpose and the mechanism to achieve that economy. So I think this is why we need multiple spheres of interface. I need to lay out that vision. I need to, I've been trained to lay that vision out. And we need power to enact that vision. So conceptually, we need to invest in the capacities of people. The point is assets are critical because what do assets do? Assets don't deplete per se, but they provide dividends in perpetuity. Assets accumulate, and without public intervention, they also consolidate and exclude. So a new conception is when we start investing in people, and I think I had one other point and I'm forgetting it, so it must, here's the other point. The notion of credit and where we've evolved as our society. And it's not completely new. One of the mechanisms to naturalize poverty and inequality is debt traps, is financialization. It is, and again, here's what I led with when I said, often it is those people that are most motivated, that are most susceptible to this type of predation, which makes it pernicious. A lot of ads for-profit colleges might be, make something of your life, get up off that couch, come down and we'll give you a loan tomorrow, but that loan comes with high interest. That's going to be a higher interest than the income you can earn that's resulting from that investment in education. It's not only education. Often you'll hear things like, we can put you in this house tomorrow if you're willing to take this subprime loan. Right? So we have a structure and a system. I'll give one more example. Sharecropping itself, as we evolved from chattel slavery, sharecropping was a mechanism that basically bonded labor without some of the burdens of the upkeep. But we weaponized financialization to trap people, and it becomes naturalized because the argument becomes these people get these bad loans. Well, if they don't have a choice but to take that bad loan, that's not a choice, that is predation.
Right, that's right.
And let's remember why I'm going to go back. The one time we did invest in people, going back to World War II, post-World War II, FHA, GI Bill, black people were largely excluded from those opportunities. Or it was limited in that. So the reason why we have to take on these debt products is because we were robbed of the opportunities to generate wealth. Not only were we denied these opportunities, we were redlined. The wealth was extracted, denied. A lot of my work, around housing devaluation. People are extracting wealth and opportunity without anyone wearing a red hat or a white hood or carrying tiki torches every single day. So we have to take on debt products. The reality is we don't need more debt products, and if we have to take them, we take them. We need more equity products. We need more investment at the end of the day. And this is where I am hopeful almost. We can create opportunities for investment. This is where power building must take place. And if you know me, and when I'm in DC and I'm talking about investments, you will hear me say this all the time, that we're not going to nonprofit our way out of these problems. We have a lot of people doing great work in DC. But these little small programs here and there, this is not going to get us out of our condition. So for me, we must get back to investing in people. At some level, we got to take the chance to invest in people. And I'm all for relief programs. I was for canceling student debt. I don't think that was the ultimate solution. We do need to figure out ways to get a single-payer health system, a single-payer higher education system. We do need to figure out ways to guarantee income for people. These are solutions. But that's going to take the kind of organizing and mobilizing that Derek described to get to that place. Because right now, so many business owners are locked into debt products, largely because their grandfather was denied the opportunity to own a home. They could not draw on that equity that should have been passed down to them.
Wow. So we have a question here. I'm going to bring it into the room in a second. But I want to come back to, and I think y'all know Peniel Joseph's work on the third reconstruct. So I want to come back to that, because what I've been hearing all day is this thing about one step forward, two steps back. And I want to come back to that in a second. But I want to get this question here. Just want to put a pin in that. Go ahead, please.
First off, I'd like to say thank you guys just so much for...
Can you tell us who you are?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry, y'all. My name is TK Spanla. My full name is Takuza Regis Spanla. I was originally born in Harare, Zimbabwe. My parents want a green card. I moved to the DMV, worked my way through, got to the University of Maryland, graduated with a PR degree 2014.
Yes, sir.
And while at the University of Maryland, I also wanted to make sure that I was able to bring as many black people with me on a school that is predominantly white. So I was elected twice as the IFC recruitment chair, had the largest year-over-year increase in students to join Greek life. And a large part of that was because I made events where you had to meet black people. You know, like it was a lot of fraternities, you would get invited to these parties just through word of mouth if you knew somebody. And, you know, I had friends that were able to bring me into these spaces, but I saw that a lot of other people that looked just like me were kind of being denied at the door. So when I was able to get into that room in that situation to have control over the events, I created something called Meet the Greeks, where each fraternity had to take a room in the mathematics building, and you had to fill out a form that showed you met this amount of people. So it wasn't about parties anymore. It was about anybody who wanted to just kind of go into this new world. Even if they didn't look like you, you had to meet them. And so after that, I ended up working with AFSME. I helped them with the Janus first.
Yeah. That's what's up.
I worked on the Janus case, the Supreme Court one, and then worked the NAACP. I helped the Orange County chapter. They got Website of the Year. I'm a web developer and designer.
Y'all need a web developer?
I started off at Shaw Library. I lied to my parents. I quit my job, and I just taught myself how to develop and design code, make websites, and Shaw Library down on in DC. That's where I got my beginning. And you know, through the years, what I'll say is that I've been able to breach the room and to provide myself the opportunities to get into a lot of large companies that aren't predominantly black. And for me, I've always held it as like my life mission to, you know, be able to do what I do it well, be confident in myself, but excel. Like you got to be 2 times as better, so that I'm able to bring everybody behind me onto there as well. And I would say as of last year, I got there. And I want to know what I could do to help bring other people who look just like me. This little cute black kid with a big smile. You know, like you have to believe in yourself and you have to see yourself being at these things. And I was blessed with 2 parents who just fed me the gospel. Sade, Seal, everything. It was just like nonstop, good word, good energy, and it allowed me to believe in myself in a way that has led to almost 8 patents using AI.
Yeah.
And so my question to you guys is, what opportunities are there for other young black kids to believe in themselves? Because I think that that is the core of everything. That is what the barbershop gave me. I met a bunch of older, like just guys who just, they taught me how to be a man.
I mean, the dimension of health inequality that perhaps surprising, maybe not, there's less of a gap in inequality is often psychological dimensions, which is counterintuitive. It's not as if black people are more depressed than white people. It's not as if black people suffer from mental health more, and perhaps that's shocking, given all the things that we go through. So I guess I'm pushing back slightly, because it's the barbershop, that I'm not sure it's necessarily the issue of we're psychologically damaged, that we don't have aspirations. I think in my view, it's more material conditions. I'm going to say, first, let me give you some shout outs. You are vested in building power, which is right on in the spot thing that we need to do. Bringing people together and pursuing approaches that you think is right, that is fundamentally how we're going to have to change, build power. So big shout out for that. But I don't know if our problem is psychological. I know that becomes a big argument, but collectively, with empirical data, that is the one dimension where we often do better than the white population.
And if I could just
interject. I just want to add a little bit to that, because at some point I was going to talk about this, that on my work in housing devaluation, we found that homes in black neighborhoods are underpriced by 23%, about $48,000 per home. Cumulatively, about $156 billion is lost in black neighborhoods. And I always put this in perspective. That's the amount that's the equivalent of 4.4 million black-owned businesses, based upon the average amount black people use to start their firms, would have paid for more than 8 million college degrees, covered all of Hurricane Katrina damage, twice the amount of the opioid crisis. And that's why I say every single day that there's nothing wrong with black people that ending racism can't solve.
Right.
When things go wrong in black communities, we blame black people. We say that we need more drive.
Right.
I just don't see that. And maybe you're not trying to say that, but when I hear people say, what opportunities for black people are there? I mean, black people are, this is the other thing, black people are progressing. I mean, I don't want
conservative.
Okay,
barbershop. We conservative.
Okay, we're gonna have a little bit of conversation about this.
Yeah, in so many indicators, from education to life expectancy, we are progressing now. Now there is variance in that, but I never want to discount the progression, because the progression is largely because of people like you in this room. I mean, outside in this amphitheater, that people are doing good work, and it is working. Now, there are barriers we need to remove, these drags of racism we need to move, but I don't want to ever discount what these structures are doing to us, as opposed
and capital. It ain't just ending racism. I'll add, if we ain't got no capital.
Right.
And I'm sorry, guys. I meant to just say specifically, if y'all have any organizations I could support. That was more about that. It's not about like us and like confidence at all. Because yeah, no, and I don't mean it to come off as that, because you guys are inspiration. But
yeah, and the truth of the matter is, I need to learn from you, because you're crushing it. You have power and purpose that you're building.
Let's get his brother around the applause.
And you know, this is part of generational strategies also. I can tell I'm older because my beard is grayer, but there needs to be space that I can hear innovative ways, and if I have experience that I can impart on you, this is also part of the transformation and power building. So it's a conversation. I know our time's running out, so the answers are going to try to be real brief. I think from a policy standpoint of so there's policy and there's power building, and you can teach me how to build power because you're doing it. On a policy standpoint, I believe that we need to, one, invest in unions, because that's collective organizing, or some structure of collective organizing, but also this concept of inclusive economic rights. Andre brought up canceling student loan debt, and then obviously I know he also means the complement of ensuring that people can get a quality education, so tuition-free public education from grade school all the way through college. That's a common sense policy, in my view, that gets rid of the stigma and threat of finance for something that is so dire and important for somebody to have capabilities in their life. So that is a policy apparatus, but he also pointed out that that won't be enough, and it won't. There is no one single bullet policy, but there is a concept of policies which are good services and resources without which you don't have agency. And it's not an infinite list, but it's not a finite list either. It is health. You should be able to go see a doctor without the threat and stigma of finance at your most vulnerable point when you're sick. So single-payer health insurance, to me, is a common sense economic right. And the other key word that I should add that we talked about earlier, these are investments. It is an investment in not only the person, but our society when they can get a college degree without the albatross of debt. It is an investment in the person in our society when somebody can go see a doctor without the sorter of finance, again, at the most detrimental point in their life. Wealth. I talk about baby bonds, but there are other ways in which you can do it. Having capital so that you can get into a home, having capital so that you can have an education without debt, or having capital so that you can be an entrepreneur if you are so inclined. These are concepts of economic rights and a policy apparatus that I think we need to build and implement if we're going to change that equation of a public infrastructure that's over-invested in profit and speculation and under-investment in our human capacity.
Thank you. And thank you, dear brother, for bringing that question. So our time is getting away, and I'm going to ask two questions at the same time. We're in the barbershop, but I'm going to push back hard on this. This has just been perpetual energy that I've been feeling. I'm not so sure that we are progressing, Andre. It looks like in so many ways we are, and it's happening in pockets, and it looks shiny sometimes. Me and you do got on pretty socks up here. I'm just, sorry, brother, you missed the socks memo. But it feels like it's one step forward, two steps back. And, I guess I forget who said it, who wrote that book, The Hidden Cost of Being African American? I remember what that book, but he talked about how we sometimes measure progress, and this is for black folks and for all of us. We measure progress by where we've come from, not necessarily against where we're trying to get to. And, if we're measuring progress from because we're in the barbershop now, if we're measuring progress from, we're not on plantations or, women, not voting and now vote, it looks like progress, but you look at where we're going and what we're contending with. The court just rolled back the Voting Rights Act, right? This is the seminal, what they call the crown jewel of the civil rights movement in many ways. And it feels like the people who are the authors of this empire, right? They're committed to rolling back anything that looks like progress. And it feels like at times they've been pretty effective at that. So if we were in a barbershop, I would be up out my chair saying, Dre, I don't know if I agree with you on that, or I'm having trouble with it. So that's just an observation. Then the other question, because the time's getting away from us, and since we're brothers, we're in a barbershop, and Andre, I really appreciate the way you talked about, both of you actually talked about, the way that masculinity was taught and modeled in the barbershop. There were some really good lessons that we learned in the barbershop, and there's some things that we got to be critical about, right? And so in that spirit, one question is, what should we be saying to brothers and men at large who are invested in these systems, right? Getting money, patriarchy, all the stuff that is in these systems that in many ways is pressing black women and women at large to the mat. Like, what do we say to brothers who are invested in that system that also is harming our people in our communities? Like, because we've all been socialized into, like, we got to fight to get into this thing because we think that's the best thing since sliced bread. But that thing is also in many ways killing us. And how do we, like, get men in particular and brothers in particular to see both sides of that equation?
I have a couple of responses. I do think we're in a time where there's a great deal of discouragement, but I don't want us to confuse a backlash with going backwards. We are seeing the response to progress in objective terms. Black people are more educated. We are becoming healthier. We are expanding family. We are breaking down many of the barriers that existed. And the opposition knows this. You are realizing this response. And there will be times, like the times that we are in, and it'll feel like we're going backwards. And I say to this, and Derek and I talked a little bit about the Voting Rights Act right before we came in, to be determined. Do not act as the denial of various orders that didn't necessarily serve us well in the first place are going to be fatalistic in some sense. We still must organize and mobilize to get to the places that you want to get to. And we're nowhere near there. We're not nowhere near the promised land. But what I'm saying is we should not deny ourselves the progress that we are making every single day. That's just me being more of an optimist, but it's really me seeing the data. We are moving forward. Now, for black men, I will say this, and I was in an interview this morning talking about the unemployment rates for women, black women. And I said, well, what about the black men? It was like, 0.2 of a point difference, right? And I just want black men to understand this. We need to see each other in this discourse. Because even in this conversation, I'm going back with this reporter, I said, yes, there's been demonstrable harm to black women in the D.C. area because of the federal apparatus. There was also demonstrable harm in not hiring black men in the federal government to begin with. We are inextricably linked. And then the reporter went on to suggest that gender, or equate gender between black men and white men. I just want to be clear. Black men are not, the analog to the black men are not white men when it comes to black men and black women.
Oh, that's true. And that's an important distinction. But we want to be.
I don't know about that.
Oh, I don't want to be. We want to be. That's the problem.
I mean, I don't know about that.
Everybody wants to be.
But that's the thing. That's what we've been taught, that everyone is striving to be a white person. And I don't know about that.
So, hold on, wait. We even tried to, if we could, by skin color, we even tried to pass to be white people. Like, I mean, and it's not.
I hear that, but
and it's not insane because that's where the goodies are.
But my experience, and this is real barbecue.
Yeah.
I meet more Dereks of the world than otherwise.
Right.
I meet, and he's trying to be cool, and he's trying to be me all this time. No, I was joking. But the reality is, in this conversation with the reporter, it was like we are not seeing black men in this analysis at all. We need to be seen as well in all this. And so right now I'm just saying to my brothers Lyndon and all the folks out there doing great work, you need to be seen, you need to be acknowledged. But because in this discourse, we are in this together. We are in this together. We need to work together. We need to play together. We need to pray together. All those different things. This is not some breakup of this competition between black men and black women. We are a black community. And the way the economy plays out looks different in terms of income, in terms of incarceration, but from a 30,000-foot view, we are in the same community. And so, but sometimes we are not seen. So I'll leave it there. I want folks to be seen.
Well, there's a book by Becky Pettit called Invisible, I think it's called Invisible Man or something, which I'll be brief with this point, makes the point when we look at statistics, we often ignore the fact that there's a big segment of the black male population that's incarcerated. They're clearly not dead, but if we're looking at unemployment numbers, they often are not in the denominator. But that was just to make your point that somebody literally describes it as invisible people. Also wanted to make, I agree with you that there is a structural pull towards the in-group, and people want to be it's rational to be lured towards the benefits that go along with being white. And to the extent that identity is fluid, there is a gravitation towards that all people are susceptible to. The one thing that stops people from fully going in that distance is cognitive dissonance. That we have a psychological cost on being something that you're not. There's a psychological penalty of disassociating from one's ancestry and who you are. But there is an economic struggle between that cognitive dissonance and the material rewards that go along with distancing from blackness towards being in the white in-group. So these are the structures that are not inevitable that we need to fix, that we need to break up. To answer the question...
But it's not just men that have that problem, right? You're right.
Going back to the original question.
What was the question? I forgot.
Yeah, I forgot. and me trying to find my notes with all this.
Like one step forward, two steps back. Yeah.
I'm going to lead with, I'm a humanist first and foremost, but I understand that in our society, black people have strategically been disenfranchised both politically and economic, and that's the key word I want you to hear, strategically. When we think about race, it's not simply bigotry or ignorance, it serves a purpose. The notion of are we moving forward, I think the elephant in the room is Donald Trump. I think what's in that question, and when we hear things like the Voting Rights Act, it is how could we be progressing as a society when we hear some of the things that's coming out of the White House? To me, Donald Trump is a symptom.
That's right.
He is a symptom of a bipartisan economy that has left us at a position of paradigm change, and the position of paradigm change that he's exhibiting is a vulnerability. When people are not able, when their mobility is constrained, they hone in on their lateral status. So there's a trade-off between vertical status and horizontal status. So the lure towards sexism, the lure towards, racism, the lure towards fascism in general becomes more potent when a politically dominant group is vulnerable. So I see it as opportunity. I see it as we've had a long run of growing inequality that we have not seen since the Gilded Age. And the current paradigm is vulnerable. It is not going to persist. The way we go forward is either going to be way step back or way step forward. But the American people are open to a new vision, and what we're seeing exhibited right now is one of fascism. So I hope I made that point clear. I don't know if I did. I'll bring it up. You also referenced the voting right. What's happening with the destruction of the voting rights? And we know that that's intentional. We know that the court is 6-3 of a conservative group that's hell-bent on moving us back versus the 3 justices that got in. Again, thinking about symptoms and power building, a lot of that blame should go on the Democratic Party also. When they had power, did they exercise it? Did they utilize it in such a way to shield us against this backdrop? So we need to be sophisticated in that if you have values, but you are not exercising power to utilize those values, you're setting society up. You're setting society up for, thank you, when people without values have power, they get reckless and abusive. Right. This is all from King, by the way. Right. So I'm going to close on the other point. I'm trying to hold too much. That's why I'm not eloquent. But the point about masculinity, the point about, and Andre covered a lot of it. I can tell you what we shouldn't do. Going out trying to chastise black men and tell them to pull your pants up and to tell them, right, here's a little one-liner. It might be aesthetically pleasing if all the black boys pull their pants up, but it's not going to increase more jobs. But here's the away from the one-liner. Telling black people, you know, what happened during the last political election? And since we're calling out names, I'm going to call out Barack Obama. I found it offensive that he was going out telling black people to go out and vote. That was so disturbing. You go out and earn a vote. You go out and try to convince them and ask them for the vote. But chastising black men, and Andre said this as well, who outside of black women are more likely to vote for a woman candidate, are more likely to vote for a progressive candidate. And if we look at numbers, again, the Invisible People book describes that black men are largely disenfranchised because of mass incarceration. So one thing we need to do is not chastise people, but try to bring them along. But it also castigates them in ways that are unfair that we've also been describing. So I'm going to try to put a button on what I'm saying by arguing or making the case that intersectionality is important, but it requires context. To come out with these broad tropes of, I'm even going to, actually I'm not going to do this, but to come out with these broad tropes of just center black women alone, I don't think that's the right way to go. I think that when you find a context where you need to center black women, absolutely. Black women carry extraordinary burdens. But when we come up with narratives that black women are superheroes, you're caricaturing them. You're not making them human. So I think we need to be accurate and precise with our notions of intersectionality. And the other point is, I think it's a political ploy. I think what's rooted in it is a narrative that black men aren't shit. And the point that Andre also made is that you can't separate men and women so neatly from larger family structures to begin with. So when we think about an incarcerated individual, not only is that a burden on the black man, the black woman who has to pay extraordinary fees simply to call their spouse, well, that's burdensome, right? This is the point. So who benefits from a narrative of divisiveness where we try to pit and describe black women and men against each other? One should question that. I'm not anti-intersectionality, but it requires context and it requires precision. Otherwise, it is a caricature and it's a political ploy to disenfranchise one group of people when we should be trying to bring them in.
My goodness, can we give these two brothers a round of applause? And Marla, I know that you're already thinking about what the next convening looks like. I want to suggest that we actually bring the barbershop and the beauty salon together. Because could you imagine how this conversation would have happened if that would have happened? So, Andre, the haircut looks nice over there. Yours too, yours too. Thank you very much. And to the network, please keep fighting. Hopefully that something we've said here will be helpful as you do your work. Keep asking the hard questions. And my prayer is that the ancestors, whatever ancestors you call on, that they would be pleased with what we are doing right now. So thank you, dear brothers. I'm gonna turn it over now to our—
Can we say thank you to all the folks involved in the Health Equity Summit? This is spectacular.
Aha!
Marla Dean.
Yes.
I'm going to conclude with pettiness. I grow my afro because I'm petty.
We like petty, we like petty. So we're gonna take a picture, and I think the illustrator's gonna be talking here in a second. Thank you.
I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for being here in the uncertainty of what we were going to have in terms of weather. I really appreciate it. But most of all, I want to say thank you to Tonya Wellens, the CEO of the Greater Washington Community Foundation, who sincerely gives me the opportunity and the space to vision, to push, to question, to create. Not all bosses allow you to do those things, and she does. So I just want to say thank you.
First of all, I'm not her boss. I am, in fact, her colleague and friend. And one of the most important things that I think one of the most important decisions I've been able to make as CEO is choosing Marla Dean to lead the Health Equity Fund. Please give it up for Dr. Dean. This is Marla Dean's vision. She advocated for it, she pushed for it, she designed it, and worked with an amazing team of partners, Joseph A. Smith Creatives. I acknowledged Isabel and Nathan earlier, and the entire team at the Greater Washington Community Foundation to bring it to fruition. You know, I think we're really lucky that the Health Equity Fund Committee, and Wendell Johns is still here, and a few people have floated in and out today, gave us the full creative authority to live out the values of the Community Foundation in our 10-year strategic framework, which had us focused on economic justice. We've been able to invest, as I shared at the beginning of the morning, $90 million in ideas and people, new frameworks, and the people to deliver on them over the last 4.5 years. And we are only scratching the surface with what we've learned, what we've been able to accomplish, because the story is still being told, right, Brandy? The story is still being developed. The outcomes are still being delivered. I shared earlier that we've touched 155 grant partners, 3,000 youth, 60,000 adults, 400 large businesses, 175 entrepreneurs, 36 individual public policy and advocacy campaigns. So much of our work was delivered through direct cash assistance. Some of you know that some of my favorite projects were the work that we got to do in buying down debt and unwinding aired property, working on both sides of the balance sheet, on debt reduction and increasing assets. Those are the stories that we're going to get to tell over the next year. Stories so that when there is a new administration, local, state, and federal, will create a policy framework for what this new world that we get to create will look like. And so that's what's giving me hope today, is that we're getting attacked blow by blow on every end, every single day. But we get to do important work, Kim Perry, that allows us to till the ground, till the soil, plant the seeds, and be prepared when the time comes for us to pick up ourselves and continue to lead. I want to say thank you all. Thank you very much. I want to say thank you all for being here all day with us. Again, a huge acknowledgement to my colleagues at the foundation, to the amazing leadership of Dr. Marla Dean. Thank you so much for your partnership.